Roy Cohn used to great extent.
Now, I want to top it off here. We get to page 442. You're talking about this reporter, Charles Sencott, and he writes this report, and it talks about a bunch of popular, powerful people back then. But you're going to notice when I read this, that name Cuomo, it's still around today. Mm-hmm. Sencott's report was attacked viciously by columnists and other New York media outlets, powerful politicians, including the then governor of New York, Mario Cuomo, and Cardinal John O'Connor. The Archdiocese of New York, now led by O'Connor, intervened to broker a deal between Ritter and the Manhattan District Attorney Robert Morgenthau. Now, Morgenthau, he trained Giuliani, Louis Freeh, Spitzer, all these guys, Henry Morgenthau was part of like the 1934 New Deal, I think, back then.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So there's a long history there. O'Connor's predecessor, Cardinal Francis Spellman, had been a close friend of Roy Cohn and alleged attendee of the Plaza Hotel blackmail parties involving Cohn, Hoover, and Rosenstiel.
Spellman was a pedophile also. I mean, I talk about that earlier in the book. So basically it's a very corrupt office by that point. So the guy that takes over for Spellman after he dies, and then the Cuomo family are trying to stop attacks on this priest named Bruce Ritter, who had created a charity for runaway teens called Covenant House. And this journalist, Charles Sinnott, basically talked to a bunch of children or teens that had been involved with Covenant House. And they said that Ritter was like giving them money for sexual favors and stuff and all sorts of really yucky stuff. And so he aired that out, and the attacks were, from all of these people really. And then, as I see you have highlighted below, Covenant House decided to investigate itself. And so they hired Kroll Associates.
How convenient. This is another coincidence, and it reminds me of the other things that were ongoing at the time. You had the Finders, you had Franklin Cover Up, you had Boys Town, you had, what was that?
Discovery? It was all coming out really at the same time. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Which is really crazy when you think about it. And then you have a lot of people involved with the Promise software all end up dead in 1991 as well. Robert Maxwell, John Tower, Danny Casolaro, and one of Casolaro's main sources at the NSA, Alan Standorf, all just end up dead in 1991.
And John Tower of the Tower Commission that investigated Iran-Contra or BCCI, one of those, he's an agent of Israel. They got the drop on him.
He was on Mossad's payroll, but it was Robert Maxwell that facilitated that. And the person that brought Robert Maxwell and Tower together was Henry Kissinger.
of Dope Inc. fame. Have you ever read Dope Inc.?
I haven't, but the thing with the LaRouche people, for me, at least in Executive Intelligence Review, is that a lot of their claims sound really believable, but they don't provide the sourcing. So if you can't corroborate, or if I can't corroborate something they say, I don't include, so.
I concur, but you can corroborate a lot of it. Yeah.
But there's some stuff like Max Fisher, who I talk about a lot in volume 2. The LaRouche people say he was involved with the Detroit Purple Gang. And, oh, man, I wish that were so, but I couldn't corroborate. And they didn't cite their source. So I was like, blah.
Yeah. It's a good starting point, but it's not a conclusion. I always have to say, well, where can I find independent evidence of that?
Yeah, right.
Before I can do anything with it. Now, in the case of Covenant House and this cover up, Kroll Associates claim that none of them viewed individually can be proved beyond any question, while also claiming that the cumulative evidence against Ritter was extensive.
Right. It's just like a report of contradictions.
And they're the intelligence agency of Wall Street is the point. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, well, I was just going to say some of their reports when they're called to investigate stuff, they no, they can't get away with a total whitewash. So they just have this contradictory gobbledygook. And you also see that with reports of the official of the federal government that's meant to dismiss stuff, like the BUA report that dismisses the Promise software, or I forget the guy that dismisses I can't remember the counsel's name. But the guy that dismisses any sort of foul play with Vince Foster's death and stuff, they note all of these contradictions that totally undermine the official narrative, but then they include it, but they don't analyze it. And then they'll say as an executive summary or in the conclusion, the official narrative, but you actually go and read it and you're just like, what is this? And Kroll Associates are masters at that. And as I noted in the book, too, they were also called in to investigate, I think, the Marcos Gold stuff with the Philippines that, of course, involved Adnan Khashoggi and apparently actor George Hamilton, who in this exact same period of time is going on all these vacations with Ghislaine Maxwell.
Well, he played Dracula at the end of the 70s. I'm sure he was
Needed something to do, become financial advisor to Imelda Marcos. She sure has a really interesting stable of financial advisors. That's for sure.
Well, she had a lot of shoes too, didn't she?
Yeah.
Like thousands of shoes. She was like, she was hip before it was hip to have all those shoes. At the end, right at the end of the book, you bring up one of my favorite pieces of American unspoken history, which was that the Washington Times front page of the receipt from the call boys visiting the White House in the H.W. Bush administration, which also happened in the W. Bush administration with Jeff Gannon, but we don't have time to talk about that. Mm-hmm. Let's go back to that time when H.W. Bush administration had young call boys in the House, because this is all setting the stage for Epstein and his rise to power. And he's already doing his thing with Iran-Contra, but he hadn't done the sex blackmail thing to the point where we know about it in volume 2. Right. Mm-hmm. So this was like, do you think H.W. Bush was being blackmailed? And if you're being blackmailed, you might as well just have the call boys come straight to the house and pay credit card? Or what do you think that was all about?
It's really hard to know, and a lot of people have speculated about like George Bush Sr. and like what he was into. There's a lot of claims, right? And, I obviously can't document this, exactly what was going on. But the fact that these boys were allowed into the White House is very disturbing and speaks to the amount of access that someone like Craig Spence, who's the focus of these Washington Times articles, had. And of course, Craig Spence is the business partner of Larry King in this sex trafficking enterprise, which is the Franklin scandal, which is a very disturbing scandal. I mean, it's even, to me, more disturbing than the Epstein sex scandal, because you're not just having, the exploitation of minors for sex, you're also having the physical torture and murder of children. So that's like really next level. And, apparently the guy that connects Craig Spence to the White House is Donald Gregg, who's a very shady actor, very consistently, close to the Bushes. It's hard to know why they were going there. Yeah, maybe there is some truth to the rumors about Bush, but the problem is, we don't need to have the answer to those questions to realize that something is seriously effed up. If these, underage boys that were used as part of this ring were being given access to the White House. I mean, that like just obviously demands a massive investigation. And that's just one point, within these 2 books that is just like that, like obviously we need to get to the bottom of what happened there. But the problem is that I also point out in the book is that the government isn't capable of investigating itself. So what do we do in that circumstance, right? When there's like an obvious litany of crimes against minors, against society, looting of the American public, all sorts of crimes, that have been committed and they're documented, and there's been continuity with them. And, the new generations of this group are ruling over us all. And, how do we go from there? Can we use the justice system as it exists? I mean, they've completely subverted it. And like we talked about earlier, the FBI has been totally compromised since like it was basically made in the 30s. So it's like, what do you do when the government has to be investigated and it can't investigate itself? And so that's kind of what I hope the discussion, I hope that's the kind of discussion that this book generates for people, particularly people who haven't really gotten into this stuff before and don't really know this history. Because, I mean, this has been going on for a long time. This has an insanely huge body count. It's been stealing our wealth. It's been, motive for war after war, all sorts of things. And, these are the people who are basically the real terrorists that we're being told that we have to fight against all the time. They're not who we think they are. And so, how do we bring them to justice? Can they be investigated? I mean, I think it's pretty clear that we can't rely on the FBI for, anything anymore. So what do we do?
They do hate us for our freedom. They hate us for our faith. They hate us for our optimism, for knowing that we can have the human capacity to learn our way out of these problems. They've got deep capture on our justice system, political system, yes. But at the end of the Iran-Contra, I think it was the Walsh report, there was like Latin, and it said, "Who will watch the watchers?" And I think you are watching the watchers. And this is a mirror for them to see, hey, we see what you're doing, and we know it's wrong. And even though we don't have all the details, we have plenty of details to know that this needs to be resisted. It needs to be scrutinized. It needs to be investigated. It needs to be adjudicated. And we are not going to continue living human generations into the future with this type of predation on ourselves, intraspecific kleptoparasitism. We don't need it. We don't want it. We didn't ask for it, but it's here, and they're still raining down their agenda harder than ever, trying to, like, they're desperate right now. So their desperation, like, they stink of desperation at this point with all the censorship and lockdowns, all this stuff. We own the science, World Economic Forum. You're going to eat bugs and like it. And so I really want to thank you for writing volume 1 and to talk about volume 2, foreshadowing the next conversation. These are essential elements of freedom. And if you don't understand how these things come together, you're going to be getting played by the game. You're going to be part of the enterprise that they're building out there. And it's an enterprise of slavery. It's an enterprise that is,
you're going to be the fuel for the enterprise.
Right.
You're not going to be a part of it. You're going to be the cannon fodder for it, basically. Yeah. Because this chews people up and spits them out.
Yeah. And people can't realize that without taking some time. Like, it's not going to be a Sunday afternoon read, but a couple Sunday afternoons, you get through the book, and then you have this for the rest of your life, this understanding. So I think it's an exemplary example. Yeah, it's an exemplary piece of literature. It's nonfiction. It's backed up with all the references and documents you could ever want in this situation. And Whitney's not asking you to believe her. She's just asking, read the book, consider it for yourself, make your own decisions in these topics. And I thank you for including so little of your opinion in there and just making it chock full of facts and timeline. And here's how.
That's how it has to be, because everyone wants to, not everyone, but I mean, there's definitely people who want to pick up this book and call me a crazy conspiracy theorist. You know what I mean? And so I wanted to make that like really hard for them. Yeah. So hopefully I succeeded in that, because I do have like an insane amount of references in this thing in both books. So, if you don't believe me, look it up for yourself, and decide how you feel about it. But
that's where the learning really, that's where learning really begins for people, is when they're incredulous, and then they look it up and like, actually, it's worse than she said. Jeez.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of stuff, obviously that I left out because I can't talk about all of it. And we didn't even really get to cover like everything in volume 1 either. I mean, there's obviously a lot more to get into, but what I was hoping to do, in my experience, if you're trying to open someone's eyes to like deep politics, as it's often called, they're willing to entertain the idea that these networks and groups engaged in this type of activity back in the 40s, the 50s, the 60s, maybe even the 70s. And then once you get up to the 80s and beyond, they start to get like all jittery about it, so I think if you can show the continuity between all of those crimes to the now, and, people are going to be a lot more susceptible to realizing that this never really stopped. It just, it got rebranded maybe to an extent. And, if you're going to continue voting like red or blue or whatever, I mean, you're just playing their game because they control both.
Well said.
So, if you're on the Trump 2024 train, I have unfortunate news for you. And not to dunk on Trump either. I mean, the entire DNC is basically, I mean, the stuff I talk about in the Clintons, I guess we'll talk about it next time. I mean, it's just totally mental. Like the fact they're not in prison is mind boggling, tells you everything you need to know.
Yeah. And it's because I don't think they're that powerful, but they are useful tools for very powerful people who have kept them around. And keep using them. Yeah.
And they've kept them around because they've gotten away with loads of stuff. It's really nuts.
Well, Bill's very affable,
You think that's it? You think it's just the affability, the saxophone playing?
Yeah.
That gets people.
Whitney, where can people buy these magnificent examples of literature?
Okay, so I'm hoping that I think it's in the next 4 to 6 weeks, there's going to be an ebook, an audiobook available that's going to be volumes 1 and 2 together. So that's probably going to be most cost effective for most people. But if you want to buy both physical copies, the cheapest way to do that, at least if you live in the continental US, is to buy direct from the publisher, which is Trine Day. So TRINE day.com. You look at upcoming release or new releases, and you can look for, they sell both books separately too, but the bundle significantly cheaper. And you can also buy them like Amazon or really anywhere, but the bundle, as far as I know, is only on Trine Day. And we're trying to work out stuff for people that don't live near the US because international shipping is really complicated. But, the world of logistics is like really insane right now ever since the COVID stuff happened. So, there's a lot going on there, but we're trying to sort it out. So, if you want any updates on my book and when the audiobook comes out or anything like that, you can sign up for my newsletter at unlimitedhangout.com/newsletter. And when all of those updates come out, we'll be sending out newsletters about them as well. And also on the website at the bottom of each newsletter, there's like a link to our resource page that's just all about the book and FAQs and stuff. So yeah, hopefully that covers all the bases.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for taking a couple hours out of your densely packed days. You got a lot going on. I really appreciate you sharing the wisdom that you've purveyed through these books and kind of bringing it to life through an interview so people would know why they want to invest time to read the books in the first place.
Yeah, thanks. And thanks for taking the time to read it. Because, I mean, they're not exactly short, right?
No, but it is a page turner. It is. Yeah, it wasn't.
Groovy. Well, I'm really glad you feel that way. And I hope other people do too. I mean, ultimately, what I want is just people to read it because a lot of work went into it. I think it's a lot of important research. And I think people need to be armed with this kind of information to have like productive conversations about what to do and where to go next,
Now I'm interested to see how Tim Dillon's going to interview you about these books. See what kind of he'll bring up. I've set the bar.
Yeah, it's coming up, so we'll see. We'll see how it goes. Definitely be interesting. I sent him a review copy. He's like, "You mean you expect me to read a book?" Yeah,
Two of them, Tim. Well, thank you for broadening our mental landscape on these topics, and keep up the good work. And your work's always inspiring, and it's consistently inspiring. And it takes a lot of moxie to keep a pace as you do. So thank you for doing what you do. And I encourage everyone to go check out these books and get them between your ears as soon as possible.
Thank you.
Can't hear you. Muted.
Good. Coming out of that strong 2-hour interview with Whitney, I got a bunch of notes to discuss. So let me just set this up because this will also be a separate outtake clip. One Nation Under Blackmail is what we just learned about. A couple weeks, we're going to learn about One Nation Under Blackmail Volume 2. This is the sordid union between intelligence and organized crime and Jeffrey Epstein. Got a lot of foreshadowing in Volume 1 about Jeffrey Epstein. We heard about this guy called Adnan Khashoggi, who was a famous arms dealer circa Iran-Contra. In fact, Iran-Contra, a lot of the names in Volume 1, a lot of these people, there's overlap between the enterprise, these blackmail networks, the activities behind the scenes, the slush funds of black marketeering, narco traffickers. Very interesting. Might be hard to cognize like all at once just reading because you don't know a lot of the names. So I got something here for you. Let me zoom in on this. I have several episodes that I published years ago on Iran-Contra, and I would recommend you start with episode 82, The British Elephant in the American Living Room, and work your way up through the great strategy and all the way into the Iran-Contra information. Where can you find that information? It's in the Library of Cognitive Liberty for members of the Grand Theft World community. You not only get this podcast in the town hall, you get Peace Revolution, and that's where I was just showing you those clips. Those episodes, which would give you the background, like a heavy duty, several hours of listening to the who, what, where, when, why, and how of Iran-Contra, BCCI, these sort of things. And then with new eyes, with new ears, with new understanding, consuming the book maybe on a second time. Because if you read through and you don't know a lot of the names, you go do some research, you come back to it, all of a sudden it clicks, you understand, you start to see these patterns that she's painting out over time. There's a couple more patterns. We saw this picture, the LD nicely edited in there. This is the infamous 1963, January 22nd, 1963 photo. And there's some of the people that are named in her book, some of the people that are very famous in circles of Operation 40, Operation Mongoose, JFK's assassination, all the way up through 9/11. Some of these people are continuing to be involved. So that photo comes from the cover of this book. It's the originating source for the publication of this photo. It's called Barry and the Boys, the CIA, the Mob, and America's Secret History. And while you're at it, because this is a rare book to find, so if you find it, you'll find it at Daniel Hopsicker's website. I think it's madcowprod.com. You get the bundle, you get this other book that comes with it, Welcome to Terrorland. You're going to be surprised to know that a lot of people in this book also relate to crimes of this century that are substantial and also tie into the people in this picture. So Hopsicker is a muckraking investigative journalist. He's produced some excellent work over the years. Some of this was referenced in Whitney's book, as a matter of fact. So The Mena, Arkansas, the Clinton stuff. He also has America's Secret Heartbeat. There was a couple things that tie into the research that she's marshaling here. Very interesting stuff. Khashoggi, we mentioned during that interview, Adnan Khashoggi, the arms dealer, and how he had a yacht, because I said boat and she said, no, it was a yacht. And I said, you're right. It was a yacht. It was a yacht so famous, I bet you might have seen it. Now you're thinking you probably haven't because you'd know you saw it. No, if you've seen the movie Never Say Never Again, the Bond villain bad guy is on Adnan Khashoggi's yacht that he later sells to Trump. So that piece of history we discussed in this book, One Nation Under Blackmail, is also part of a famous movie featuring not the Queen, but 007. See how I did that? Do we have that clip, LD?
Yeah, we've got a couple.
There might be a British elephant in the American living room. That's what I was saying.
Second here. Let me move the spotlight. So I'm going to keep it muted and see if that keeps us from. We've already had problems on YouTube tonight. But well, before the boat shows up, I don't know what they're looking at here, but this is all right. Sorry, moving on. We've got a fine yacht.
Oh, there it is. A major part of the film actually takes place on the yacht. He's doing kind of eugenics type experiments, if I remember correctly. It's been a while. I think this movie's circa 1984-ish. And for those following the propaganda history of James Bond, and Ian Fleming is the creator of the James Bond series, and Ian Fleming was also mentioned in that interview because his great-grandfather, Robert Fleming and Company, funded the Harrimans, who we discussed creating AIC and funding the Soviet project as well as the communist Chinese project. So
this looks like the villain on the yacht.
The yacht. There you go.
Yes.
It's the proto Klaus. Klaus wasn't ready for stage time yet, so they had that. The villainous looking actor with Alec Baldwin's first wife, Kim Basinger. All right, but this is not about watching James Bond. That was just one of the points I had to make. There was another point made in this book. I also similarly had on my desk another coin to represent it. We talked a little bit about Clark Clifford writing the report for the USS Liberty. It's called a challenge coin from the USS Liberty. I got this from the only remaining Marine to survive that attack, because I did a 3-hour interview with him and my buddy, John Massaria. We're going to talk about John a little bit later tonight. John and I, along with Nick, our sound guy, we did an interview, and I think that is still allowed on YouTube, though still much to be learned about that topic. 50 years ago, it still doesn't have its 50th anniversary coin. They still haven't had a legit investigation of this. And the reason why they might not investigate this, there might be a connection into some of the things that are discussed in volume 1 of this book. But that's not the other point only other point I wanted to make from that. There was also mention of the death of Enrique Kiki Camarena. He worked for the United States consulate.
No, we can't. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, you can't hear me or what?
No. I was just going to say real quick before you go to Kiki. There's an interesting history that you showed me with my time I spent with you over the past week in regards to why we even had naval intelligence over in that area to observe what's going on in the Mediterranean, that I found very interesting. And hopefully at some point, maybe not tonight, but some other time, we'll do a deep dive into that. Was very fascinating to me, with the sort of a verbal agreement with the JFK administration with having a base in Morocco that, of course, the Senate and the Congress had no idea about. And that was very, very interesting. Anyways,
yeah, long story short is that Country C was during the 6-Day War.
Yeah.
And there was a listening ship over there. It's thought as USS Liberty is technically thought of as like an NSA listening and communication ship, but it also has GCHQ. It also has the British on board. That's part of the British elephant in the American living room. in this whole thing. So USS Liberty gets scuttled. They try to assassinate and strafe the lifeboats. They try to kill everybody on board to make sure that communications ship doesn't warn of the pending attack that's going on and the attacks that were going on in the Middle East. And it appears from history that there's maybe like if you're trying to get rid of that information by scuttling the ship, they didn't take into effect the ship might be having ship-to-shore communications with, I don't know, the place that gives communications out for the Sixth Fleet in that area.
Correct.
That there might be more evidence to that. And why did America stand down? And why haven't we had an investigation? It's kind of like a 9/11 situation, but it's from the 60s. No one really talks about that. But I was already up to the Hector Boreas mention in there with Kiki Camarena and the DEA. This is based on an interview we did with Hector back in 2017. So before they made the Amazon film, The Last Narc, which is a mini series, it's like a couple episodes, and before they made Narcos Mexico on Netflix, here is a Writers Guild Association certified script for what we called Kilos, based on Hector's story. And if you were to look at, for instance, like the cover page, it's the rise of the Guadalajara cartel for the same years.
It's incredible.
It's incredibly similar to what became known as Narcos Mexico, only instead of from the whistleblower perspective, they took the CIA's perspective.
That's right.
And they showed you Felix Gallardo and, you know, the perspective. They whitewashed it.
They whitewashed
so
it. Absolutely.
There's a real actual whistleblower that we filmed, and it's now represented on Amazon as The Last Narc. And it's a very interesting story. And that's just a little
interesting, is an understatement. It's quite literally astounding and unbelievable what
if one were to
Hector
read
went
this,
through and what happened to Kiki. And the first, like you had that split up in the seasons. The first season was about Kiki's story and what happened to him.
Yeah, here's what: Rise of the Guadalajara Cartel, Season 1, Season 2, Operation Leander, which is the investigation into Kiki, Season 3, Rogue Narc. Now, the ironic thing was, I sent my buddy John and Hector with this script to Netflix before Netflix made Narcos Mexico. And they had the opportunity to buy Hector's story and to get this script all together. They chose to go a different way. They represented the CIA.
Mm-hmm.
But this is what it would look like if you wanted to go pitch somebody on a project like that. Anyway, this is not the show where we explain that. I just want to mention that is a substantial storyline that if you don't understand it, her mention of it over a couple paragraphs might not do you justice. So anyway, Hector, we're looking to have him as a guest in upcoming weeks. And that's for future reference. We'll leave that there for now. You'll hold your attention a couple weeks. We'll come back to that. Now, speaking of holding your attention for a couple weeks, we will come back and interview Whitney for One Nation Under Blackmail, Volume 2. But there's a couple other points I wanted to make from that. Xi Jinping, because she talked about the multipolar theory of
she did a great job of breaking that down, because it's such a she did a fantastic job of understanding how much infrastructure development went into the East and how it seems like our multinational corporations and the oligarch is repositioning themselves to build up essentially China and Russia, particularly China, as really the technocratic sort of control system for the entire world. And that's why when Patrick Wood says, well, they seem to have embraced technocracy, it's not communism they've embraced. They've embraced technocracy. And what's technocracy defined as? I think from the 1938 Columbian.
It's like techno-communism.
No, well, it's
ruled by technology.
It's social
scientists. Yeah, it's
social engineering. It's
Fauciism.
He said he defined it, I think, based on the Columbia document as being social engineering. It's just social engineering with technology.
It's what we saw during the pandemic under Fauci's leadership.
And also, what happened in China in regards to they locking down and using QR codes. Like when you look at some of the way in which they went about implementing controls in their society, well, obviously we're still seeing it. They just built a 30,000 capacity internment camp in air quotes for their citizenry. We saw what happened months ago in regards to Shanghai.
help you concentrate there.
That's one way of looking at it.
So in agreement with her treatment of the multipolar theory of geopolitics, I would say this. My observation would be this. Putin, they tell you Putin bad, right? Putin bad. Xi Jinping bad, right? KC3, King Charles III, good. But Putin and Ping, they dress just like the king. So what's up with that? They don't have native regalia. They culturally appropriate a British tie and suit and the look of what their rulers, the people who set up their infrastructure that they're now managing. What do you think that is? Or do you think it's just like the strong British fashion has taken hold over there? I mean, I'll leave it for you at home to make your own decisions and such things.
It's a bit rhetorical.
Maybe the sartorial observation aside, there's still a lot of strength under the monopolar plan of great world government, one
correct
new world order under the United Nations with UNESCO and eugenics and the World Economic Forum and Xi Jinping and Putin. They're on board with the 2030 UN agenda and it's full speed ahead. And it's a great reset over here. It's inclusive capitalism over here. It's stakeholder capitalism over here. It's all the same thing. Correct. It's different facets to the same bullshit diamond.
Different euphemisms. Yeah. Different bullshit diamonds.
Fugazi.
That's an interesting metaphor for
Fugazi. I watched Donnie Brasco. It's a Fugazi.
Fugazi. You're absolutely right. I mean, it's just different metaphors, different euphemisms, if you will, as part of these metaphors in order to describe the same vision of a one world government. We're back to this theme of utopia, this no place, this nowhere. And it's, now here. The nowhere is now here, Tony. Now, how convenient. Maybe for the we were listening to Kurt Vonnegut a little bit and displaced in time, maybe.
Is or is not the Great Reset of utopia and the attempt by utopians to create it with their ignorance leading to the unintentional dystopia that now we're starting to see on the horizon here.
Which is how ironic that it would create a dystopia, even though it's supposed to eliminate human suffering and bring about a new human golden age.
But Dostoevsky says you need suffering with meaning and, to really self-actualize and to test your mettle and develop your character and integrity. You need these types of trials and tribulations.
That's correct.
And Vonnegut made his whole career about having characters, if you don't know what happens to them is good or bad, right? Kind of like Hamlet.
It's all about nuance. It's all about nuance of shades of gray in between.
Things happen to Hamlet. Is that a good thing or a bad thing that happens to Hamlet? You won't find out until later, right? So there's a lot of nuance in these sort of things.
Correct.
And it helps to be literate and not just watch like TikTok videos for 8 seconds at a time in order to see your way out of these things. Now, if you want to be trapped inside the thing they're creating, have at it. You got the metaverse, you got the goggles, you got, all the stuff that they got going on over there.
No, that's well said. I mean, it's an interesting juxtaposition between factual books like what you have on screen right there, One Nation Under Blackmail, incredible read. Just got mine in the mail. I've been reading parts of it throughout the week that you have here. But then also reading these sort of fictional tales, like I talked about my first time ever reading Slaughterhouse-Five by Kurt Vonnegut, because he's explained Dostoevsky, of course, back in the early 20th century. The Brothers Karamazov and Notes from Underground and these incredible works. They really exploring
The Idiot.
Sure, yeah, absolutely. They're exploring the depths of human psychology. The fact that we embody both the capacity for incredible good and incredible evil. And we have to be aware of this sort of, I don't want to say it's a duality, but this sort of tension, this mind-body dichotomy, as Plato would sort of argue for. And it's really, in a Platonic perspective, it's about finding balance, using the rational component in order to balance the animal and the emotional side of ourselves. And that's a process of self-actualization by experiencing life, by experiencing hardship. And out of that, we seem to extricate meaning. And I think that's a very important understanding. That's where really Jordan Peterson is a sort of modern day sort of philosopher, carries forward these ideas from Tolstoy, from Dostoevsky, from Nietzsche. And, But
isn't a clean room like a utopia, Tony? Or is it maybe a different thing? Maybe it's just a little self-discipline and
self-discipline,
self-organization.
Might just be the first step to realizing that one can take and not only have agency, but take initiative in their own life to have effect on it and actually find that they might have some more meaning. And
so you can have a clean room and still believe that utopia is not really something we should be reaching out for. And instead of trying to avoid all the suffering, we should just go through the legitimate suffering it takes us to reach whatever goal we're setting for ourselves.
As Aristotle described in the Nicomachean Ethics, when he talks about the magnanimous man. And I think I wish I could read it, and maybe someday I will. Maybe I'll read it, parts of it for the town hall. Because
the magnanimous man is a superlative example. There
magnanimous man.
It's a good way to wrap it up.
The man with what's the Greek term? It's on the tip of my tongue. The man with
the golden gun. That's a James Bond.
But this is an important consideration, that we should juxtapose the deep psychology, the philosophy, the spirituality, or that all of these are sort of intertwined into the human condition, as well as the hard and cold, like the hard and cold facts. So what we see on the screen there about human activity in regards to having completely unscrupulous behavior, wanton, unscrupulous behavior, just belligerent, out of control, not even thinking, just absurd obnoxiousness in regards to that. This is really exploring the depths of human evil in a way. So we can juxtapose a lot of these these great authors in the 20th century, a lot of which came out of, ironically, Russia. And let's not forget Dostoevsky was imprisoned. I think he went to Siberia, or he was he was a political prisoner at some point.
That dude has he has a crazy story. If I remember, he was 24, 28 when he was sentenced to death.
That's correct.
And then he went through that whole experience. Then he got reprieved.
Yes.
And then he went off and started to really mature himself, because they gave him a literal ego death situation, which used to be a rite of passage for individuals. But when done by hostile forces, probably not the best thing in the world for you.
It became ritualized, and people forgot the source of where these great mysteries came from.
It didn't kill him, so it made it stronger, probably. Something like that. Now, LD, this is where you get your thumbnail for this video. Yeah. There we go. We have it. I didn't see. We're just picking up on some of the production things we needed during the week. It's like we were doing deep dives. We didn't have the right thumbnails. It was hard to get a frame. Doing it live.
Let me spotlight you. Take two.
Take two. Take two. Let me get
take two. This is what it looks like right here. There you go.
There we go. Now we do have some audio from one of those camps.
What you waiting for?
There you go.
Play that
and
over and over and over.
They'll probably just tell you to take it when they're done.
Take it.
I mean, maybe that's what Dostoevsky's really saying. The legitimate suffering that you have to go through. Maybe you should just take it. Maybe not. You could try to avoid it and create a utopia, but it doesn't seem to have a good track history. It doesn't. It really doesn't.
I agree. It's just I'm enjoying the 2:30 in the
Blackmail. That sound clip, Take It, might have come from one of those sessions at the Blue Suites at the Plaza Hotel. Now, what's interesting
one
is
of many. It seems Roy Cohn. That was very interesting. William Barr. That was hilarious. I had no idea about that. That was shocking to me. Not shocking.
Do my research, bro. I'm not phoning it in.
It's these small little details that you see in a continuity of the same players
between Bill Barr and Ken Starr. I mean, you got all the synchronicity and coincidence theory you can muster for one meal.
Let's not forget, on the other side we had Dershowitz, who was also on pedophile plane over at Epstein Island.
That he became entwined with that Epstein guy. It's very curious.
Yeah,
what predilections might draw them together? I will not speculate.
We might have a penchant for the same activity. Who knows?
Birds of a feather
flock
together. So moving forward, there's a lot to understand in this book. So reading it is one thing. Understanding the connections between the people is
that's
another
the logic
thing.
Stage. That's important. So you want to get you can almost treat volume 1 as the general grammar stage. You're getting the basic facts, the basic details for what is then going to be the very interconnected web of volume 2. Not that she lays out the interconnected web of volume 1, but as you stated, it's pure facts. She does a great job of leaving out speculation, and that's to her credit as a journalist. And I agree with RFK, probably the most profound and the best investigative journalist we have to this day. And there's some great ones out there, but it's a kudos to her intelligence and her mettle and her fortitude. I mean, she did this in the time of a pandemic, and she had a child, and she didn't have much, as she mentioned, much help in that regard. Oh, second child, excuse me.
She had a toddler, and then she had a baby. So she already had a toddler when the pandemic started. Then during the book production, she also became a mom a second time.
Oh, that's awesome. I mean, congratulations to her, but that's a lot considering she couldn't get much help. And I know she was, and that, let's not forget, during that time, she was traveling from Chile she was in England. I know she went to England
she's
for a
got
little
moxie.
bit. And
There's
then
no
she went back
excuses
to
attitude
Chile.
over there. She's swinging for the fences.
Sounds like someone who takes initiative and takes responsibility. And I don't know, just noticing.
Now, something that might help people if you're reading volume 1 and you're not familiar with these people, you could do something for yourself. Like you could reference the model that we have in the Grand Theft World community, or you could just build your own model. Ask the question, who is Adnan Khashoggi? And you get his Wikipedia page and you get this free software at personalbrain.com. I mean, I use the professional software because I output my models, but you're just building an understanding. So drop it in there, drag and drop the URL, grab it from the bar. We have tutorials on this. We've done it in the past years. And you start finding out. So, he's influenced by Ibn Saud and he was part of this BCCI. You drag those pieces in, you read those pages too. You got to go to BCCI and say, what was the Bank of Credit and Commerce International, and get a gist of what that general grammar is. And you don't have to know everything about it, but you're just building out. These are literally you building synapses in your head, new neurons. You are actually creating new territory, new real estate in your brain by understanding what was the Mujahideen. Did it have a relationship with Iran-Contra affair? And as you understand each of these topics, you're like, oh, there's a lot of overlap. There's a lot of overlap. And then at some point, your brain makes critical mass out of it and says, I understand. I could cogently communicate about any of these topics because you're doing that work for yourself. Now, it wasn't assigned in school. It's not going to be mentioned on the nightly news. You're not going to see Tony Robbins saying, hey, you should go out and learn about these types of things, right? You're going to have to do this for yourself. We are just inviting you to do similar things that we did, and we found it so useful that we continue to talk about it and build these synapses. Like this model that's in front of you, I started building this in 2008. I will still be working on it in 2028 if all goes well, and we still have electricity and they haven't sent us back to the Stone Age. This is essential to my understanding, memory, and communication. And I invested in myself by just sitting down and doing the learning day by day by day by day over years and years and years and years.
And I watched a lot of that when I spent time with you. And I think the most important thing for people to realize is that memory works by association. So when you make these connections, it's amazing what you'll be able to recall once you have a what's the word I'm looking for? A fulcrum or a pivot point or something you can latch onto. And all of a sudden it just becomes something automatic. But you have to form these associations first, because it's going to be a random sort of noise or chaos at first with all these facts. And then once you start to bridge these connections and see the connections, it's much easier, and then have confidence in your ability to communicate these facts, the logical connections that go with these facts to other people. That, even though it seems so overwhelming. I mean, Rich just started with, one simple thought, and all of a sudden it built out to something that has how many thousands upon thousands upon thousands of connections. And so watching him go through it, he, highlights some books, and then he goes to the brain. Remember, and I also think about David Allen when he says the brain's great for having ideas, not holding ideas. As you mentioned, and something I've done terribly at this, but how many of us are guilty of having 100 tabs open on a browser, and then we get late at night, and if we restart the computer,
this is where I take those tabs and let them
make them into something.
Future.
Exactly.
So I can leverage them at the time in the future when I need them. So
that's right.
As a for instance, Whitney in her excellent book, she'll mention many times people like Manucher Gurbanifar. And I said, I know who that is because I listened to the Peace Revolution episodes where he's talked about from Iran-Contra. And from listening to those elements that I include in those episodes, I had modeled out who were his influences, how did he get to that position, what were key things that he did. I don't know a lot about the guy, but I know more than most anybody who's delivering television news on any of these topics just from doing a little reading. And we can all be more educated listeners and viewers by doing things like these while we're listening to a new documentary by Aaron and Melissa Dykes, or, a Corbett documentary, these sort of things, right? Jay Dyer analysis, Jason Burma's deep dive. These are things that I'm like, oh, that's substantial. I want to put that into the model. This is evergreen information, right? When someone's talking about 9/11 and we need to talk about the aircraft piracy changes on June 1st, 2001, that puts Rumsfeld in control of shooting down planes all of a sudden, I need to know where that's at. I need to know who was involved with it, what changes were made, what other stand down orders
not to mention
were in place.
Was it Kroll?
Otherwise, I'm going to be a chump.
Was it Kroll, the
Kroll
one that
Associates,
redid the security recently in the trade? I forget it was Kroll
They're
or
all through her
Securicom, or am I thinking of Securicom?
Well,
Maybe I'm getting
Securicom
confused.
is the Marvin Bush company. Kroll is who took over World Trade Center security, where John P.
Okay, that's
O'Neill.
right. It was Kroll then. It was.
That's
Kroll.
the second John O'Neill this episode.
Yeah.
5 hours ago was John J. O'Neill. This is John P. O'Neill. And there was also the Kroll on-track data recovery, Kroll security group. And I worked amidst these companies because the owner of this company, both owners of this company, were clients of mine. So this is where my professional life crossed into these crazy ideas that are expressed in films like this, right? Noticing
that's been scrubbed from the internet apparently recently.
Right. We tried to show clips of that.
Yeah.
But they talk about
still
guys
have
like
it preserved,
this,
but yeah, good.
and he's not scrubbed from the internet. So you could start by saying, who's Hank Momo Greenberg, Maurice Greenberg?
And it's not Momo Strong. This is Momo.
No, this is a different Momo. And what were his intelligence? What was his connections to Anglo-American intelligence and the OSS, and all the things that funnel down to the narco state? Look, here's CV Starr and Company, Cornelius V. Starr.
Cornelius Starr. AIG.
Wow, didn't we just talk about Kenneth Starr earlier? And that's all up in there. There's Mao Zedong. Does
American
he have something to do
Group.
With Chinese communism? Weren't we just talking about that?
And it's interesting because Mao Zedong,
any of these topics.
He's the one who let it wasn't just by the sword and all the blood that was shed in China. Let's not forget about the Cultural Revolution that took place as well. That sort of then from which they appropriate Western values, such as the same sort of attire that KC3 would wear. So they seem to have to erase one's culture and to prepare the runway for the landing.
That's interesting because here's a good reference, and it looks like they've erased this culture. Deal with the Devil: How the Global Elite Recolonized China by James Corbett. They've erased that culture.
Wow, there you go.
I wonder what's in there that's so threatening to society in these topics. Look, here's the multipolar world right here. Isn't it AIC, China and US? Here's multipolarism right here. You're saying it's China and USSR or Russia today, right? Like it's all set up by the same robber barons.
100%.
And it's all based like opium trade money and slavery.
And they're the ones who built the infrastructure in regards to the railways, both in Russia and in China. And that was
here's David Rockefeller bragging about it and from a China Traveler in 1973, August 19th. Let's see if I can get it on screen here. Oh, it's a deletion notice.
Wow.
They got to censor that off the interweb, everybody.
That's so crazy. We got to start screenshotting this stuff, man.
10th,
we almost need to go through. Someone who's out there who wants to go through Rich's brain and start screenshotting some of the references he had there, because they're 10 years ago, this wasn't an issue, but obviously now it's becoming overwhelming in regards to scrubbing the internet. This is so obnoxious. Dude.
The part where he bragged about part 2 will be in a couple weeks, because the rest of the topics tonight will still celebrate that title, One Nation Under Blackmail. That's the theme for this episode. But I wanted to get into this case where I heard in the past week, I think it was in a closing statement, the Night of the Dark Soul. I think it was a quote used by Norm Pattis, which is interesting in the context of the second Alex Jones trial. The first one was in Texas. This one is in Connecticut. He's down to 6 jurors, and he was already found in default and liable.
Default judgment, correct. Yeah.
And so this is just about damages. It's a damages hearing that's going on. A lot of things discussed had nothing to do with his defense because it wasn't a viable
He can't
thing.
Mention it, but
So
the prosecution or the plaintiff counsel in this case could bring it up ad nauseum in regards to gaslighting when he can't respond to the things they're claiming he said, because he was never found guilty of that. So that was, well, it is just
so what we're going to do
obnoxious.
is we're going to go to just to give LD a heads up what we'll go to next. We're going to go to closing statements by the plaintiff and closing statement by Norm Pattis for the defense. And I'll give a little, because I listened to a lot of the trial this week.
Man, it was tough to listen to. Those closing statements were ridiculous.
Where we left off last week was Jones was supposed to come back and testify, and then he didn't end up going back and testifying. So they did direct examination. They didn't do cross-examination to repair that, and they were going to have him come back and testify and kind of like testify in first person. And he would have more freedom to express himself because he didn't have very much freedom in the clips we saw last week. that ended up getting scuttled. I missed the part of the deliberations or behind the scenes or the sidebars where that all happened, because I thought he said on the one broadcast this week he was headed in Connecticut. I think he expected to testify. I think something changed behind the scenes, and all of a sudden they just started working on nitpicking parts of how the juries, the unanimity of all the charges,
which is
and
absurd.
All the sidebars were fantastic. You get a real legal education on how things really work by not just watching when the jury's in the room, but watching what's going on, why they had to send the jury out of the room.
Like they're talking about consensus in regards to jury deliberation and judgment. Like that's absurd, especially I don't know if that's considered standard in a civil case, but according to the judge, because it's such a strange case, because of the default judgment, what does it take? A sort of, as you pointed out, unanimous agreement, or is it just like a majority, or
it has
is
to be unanimous on each of the counts, basically?
But they say it's an average because that's what they're going to bring up.
Well, the other side. Now, here's the interesting thing. So when you get down to it, there's an argument.
You're right about it, but anyways, I'm sorry.
There's an argument being made by the plaintiffs where basically they're saying we cannot uphold our burden of proof to the jury, but it's Alex Jones and it's the defendant's fault, because they didn't give them stuff they didn't have in the first place. And I'm like, this is where you should have found out in pretrial that you didn't have a case.
Exactly.
Instead of asking everyone to imagine that you have evidence to prove, like hold your burden of proof, and that you misled these families down this whole legal route when you knew from the get-go you didn't really have, but they didn't need the evidence because they got the adjudication to be defaulted.
That's
which is
the
a
key.
really brilliant.
That was the key. Yes, it was
brilliant legal strategy.
Amazing.
Didn't
strategy.
see that one on Perry Mason. I didn't.
No one thought of it. So it was really.
I've seen a lot of Perry Mason too over the years.
Man, I'm a
big fan.
Spacing. Was it Barnes?
I think he loses 2 cases ever. Perry.
Anyway. Well, my parents still watch it. I see it every once in a while when I'm over at their house. But is it Robert Barnes? I think he mentioned that the local and state courts, like the procedural errors that are made, are egregious compared to now. Federal courts are still as corrupt, but they're not corrupt as much in procedural consideration.
Can't be as obvious. They have to hide it better.
Exactly.
And this is pretty obvious. Like
this is crazy, especially the fact they filmed the whole thing, including the sidebars, including the pre-jury. Coming into the courtrooms, you get to hear the deliberation between the two lawyers and them talking to one another about. It's fascinating. Like, I mean, it's terrifying, but fascinating at the same time.
Yeah. So the gist is there's some frustrations going on. There's 3 lawyers on the one side, Pattis on the defense side by himself. There's some friction that happens because they're trying to get him off his game. Pattis. So they're taking little digs, basically like we do this all the time. You do criminal law, you don't do a lot of civil law, and he has to defend himself. And this has been going on now for weeks, and now he's getting a little tired of it and putting up a little bit more resistance. I don't think it's necessary to go find those little clips and point all that out. I just want to.
He did a great job, though. He did a great job. I want to
explain that. Under a lot of pressure and turmoil in that situation, like he's still doing his best to defend free speech and the precedents that we're all seeing coming from this case. Because for us, it's not so much about what the guy did or said with his mouth. If he made mouth sounds and hurt people's feelings and caused them damage, then there's a process for that. But for the rest of us, the precedent being set is that you can't question official stories, especially false flags. And false flags are one of the essences of histories. And one of the first things that Machiavelli teaches when he's talking about conspiracies is the usefulness of making it think it's your enemies doing the things. Right.
It's conspiracy of the courts was through the science of leverage. It's just by having control or having leverage over someone. That's the whole idea of going back to blackmail that Whitney Webb is talking about.
Right. Sorry. So I'm just asking for fair and equal justice. And if one side has their hands tied behind their mouth back and their mouth is gagged, that's not the same as this other group being able to unfold as much stuff that may or may not be substantiated. There's a lot of hearsay. It doesn't get, the objections are overruled because special situations,
even for Norm in his closing statement, they object a number of times. They're sustained and struck from the record. So when the jurors go back to deliberate, they don't get that reference.
That part. Right.
That's correct, which is just obnoxious and absurd for on so many levels.
So a lot of unusual facets going on.
I do want to say one real quick thing, because you mentioned the First Amendment. Norm brings up, not only is it an attack on the First Amendment, it's really the First and Second Amendment. He does a good job of tying the two together and showing it's both. And Alex Jones essentially was alluding to that when his sort of reckless use of phrasing, sentencing, discussing these sorts of topics, if you will.
I wish that there was such like a vehement investigation into the absence of security, the false reports of the priest and the two nuns and the van that they were in pursuit of that morning.
There's a lot of
how
reports
all of a sudden
shots.
It's all down to the one lone shooter who happens to die in the room, and he had 100% kill rate. And then the FBI has to redact everything, and the Hartford Courant can't print anything about it. And they got the middle finger in their FOIA request. Like, none of that's supposed to matter because Alex Jones is bad man, and he needs to pay $7.8 billion to pay for his badness. That tells me ambulance chasers were misleading those families, and it really wasn't about justice for those families or making them feel better. It gave them their 15 minutes of stage so they could be heard to the public. And that, I thank those lawyers for getting those people in that situation so they could have that catharsis. But I don't like the auspices under which they were led into that situation, or the censorship used to bring this concocted story that they went and sued on into reality. Because that's another thing. They had a utopia-based story. His evidence, his discovery doesn't fit that story. So he's in default because his evidence doesn't fit their utopia story. Now they're causing censorship and a whole bunch of deletion of rights and privileges that were real things in the past. And now...
And let's not forget, Steve Pachinik, curious fellow, as well as Wolfgang Halbig, I think was his name. And so you look at these individuals, and that was what a lot of the more extreme alternative community looked into as far as alternative narratives. And I think Jason Bermas did a great job. He's like, this isn't deep research, as he said. Like, this took him 30 minutes to show, yes, it exists. I just drove by it, in fact, coming up here. This town exists, this school exists, and children died. It's a very simple equation here. It's not something out of the norm. It's very easy to look up.
But for Fetzer to write that whole book, because that's that's the other thing between Fetzer, Halbig, and Pachinik.
Yes,
those actions of those individuals.
When talk about counterintelligence, holy shit!
Like, he's being held responsible for other people's actions, and that's also something that's it's like it's not a good legal precedent.
Yes, you're right.
Unless you're going to try them under RICO conspiracy or something, and that's how they get the whole organization from one person. Like, that's what they developed for their organized crime prosecution, which Rudy Giuliani, the Knights of Malta, involved with dressing up in ladies' dress and dancing on stage with Trump. That's what he has to say. That's so. He doesn't go far from Roy Cohn. He's his new Roy Cohn. That's what it sounds like. If you read Whitney's book, Volume 1, you're like, oh, I see what's going on.
And maybe for those that are interested, Roy Cohn, that's we'll get into that more if we have some time. This Tuesday night town hall, we might get into some of the Templar Knights of Malta. We'll have to see where we go with that. But I'll talk to Senna. We've been planning a deep dive into that, and if I'm still here, maybe I'll see if I can finagle Rich to hop on as well. So we'll see. There's a lot of interesting connections there that people have been asking a lot of questions in the Q's for Richard and Tony channel. And we've discovered some more information in regards to the connection, especially with the erudite research of Whitney Webb, exposing a lot of those very troubling connections in regards to the Knights of Malta. And they're basically a territory that has they're an organization that has no specific place, but they're sort of loosely affiliated with the Catholic Church that still exists to this day. They have no financials they need to release. They operate almost like a nonprofit that doesn't have to release any information. They have over 100,000 members, many of which are very powerful. Strange. Anyways, that's a side tangent, and so we'll maybe get into that on the Tuesday night tunnel.
Yes, her expressed erudition is exemplary, but we have to get it back to the Jones trial, and so bringing it into the home stretch. They didn't have Jones testify again. I mean, so he got cross-examined.
What do you think that was? Did you hear anything about that, by the way?
I think maybe when it's already in a default and they're already going to ask for billions of dollars anyway, nothing he was going to say or present was going to change.
And everything was going to be objected to anyways, I guess, most likely. Yeah.
That's what we found out watching last week.
Right.
So the closing argument started, the jury got sent off. They didn't come back on Friday, which is a kind of a good thing that they weren't all just like, 7.8 billion unanimous, boom. Right. So we have yet to see how it fleshes out or how it affects precedents and the cooling of speech and the censorship and these sort of things going on out there. So let's go to, I can't remember if it was which attorney, if it was Maddie or Koskop did the closing, but let's go to the plaintiff's closing argument from the second Alex Jones trial. and get a flavor of what they're building out. Because let me also say,
I think Norm went first, but I just want to give this context. I think Norm went first, but the plaintiffs went second, which is sort of weird.
I think the plaintiffs went first, Norm went second, and the plaintiffs had 41 minutes left to rebut what Norm said and put it back in the box.
You're right.
But I also want to say,
confused by that because usually defense gets last. But sorry, go ahead.
That I did the hard work of. I listened to all the parents' testimony. I listened to the family's testimony. I saw the pictures of their children. I felt the anguish that they are probably still feeling in these situations of what it would be like to be a parent and faced with all that stuff, and how they felt like they lost their moorings, and they just, that's a traumatic situation. And the false reports by Fetzer, Pechenik, what's the school security guy?
Halbig, yeah,
did not help. Like, Jones is in the midst of like doing the show every day and researching. He's depending on other people to give him credible information, and those three pieces definitely didn't do him justice.
Oh, and let's be fair,
return the favor that he extended to those characters.
I have a tremendous amount of respect for what he's been able to build up, but let's not sugarcoat the fact that because it's such an operation, has such an incredible turnover of information, it's hard. One of the things I think they've struggled with is vetting information, which they're doing a much better job now, I think. But in the past, it was, he was building up his brand, his business, and it was difficult, I think, to vet everything. And he was trying, and, Steve Pechenik said some a lot of interesting things, a lot of which were true, especially in regards to 9/11 and Bush and these sorts of things. But then all of a sudden, he got sort of fed some data that didn't seem to check out. And so it's a confusing and difficult situation to be in. And
but
I think we're all learning our lesson.
Always seeking to get someone like him to take that information and run with it. So
that's the key.
I wouldn't put it past a Media Matters type of organization to kind of seed those things, or get the blackmail on one of those dudes and get them to do those things. Right.
That's right.
But what I wanted to say was, I believe the school was real. The children were real. Absolutely. Those parents are real. The pain they're feeling and continue to feel, that's real. Did he aggravate? Did he stick a finger in a not yet healed wound? Seems like absolutely. Is he the total responsibility for why Adam Lanza allegedly went in and did all those things with 100% kill rate and such efficient exchange of magazines? It's more than and that. Reloading and no jamming and all this other stuff he had to do. But we can, I'm not going to talk. That's not the point of this. The point is to hear those families and then to weigh what was said and done to them and come up with $7.8 billion. I can't, I don't know who's going to go there, or, I just think that was like such a huge ask that it made it obvious it was all about money.
Right.
And when it's called a kangaroo court and ambulance chasing, there might be something to that if you actually investigate not just one side of the story. I'm not saying that's an accurate statement. I'm just saying if you investigate more than one side of the story, you might see that there's some merit to that claim, or at least somebody holding that opinion should be respected, because those symptoms might have a deeper root cause that has yet to be exposed.
It's more than just about money, though. It's about taking down an individual and his business.
It's about one nation under blackmail.
Yeah, that's right. And let's not forget, it's not just about, he's not the one who, has any affiliation, obviously, with Adam Lanza. At the same time, he's not the one when he said what he said.
No, I bet Adam Lanza saw plenty of CNN and MSNBC and whatever else his mom was watching.
Just like the Buffalo shooter who had some sort of manifesto. He was on the left, and
or the Parkland shooter looked up the Rolling Stone to tell him what the best shooting, what was the best weapon for a school shooting, and Rolling Stone told him AR-15, and then he went and killed people. Let's not forget getting deep sixed for $7.8 billion. Oh, is that because they're on the other political side of the spectrum? I think so, because otherwise they would Remington Arms them.
Oh, interesting. I wonder how that. So so that's one way to do it. Do it through the courts. Noticeable. The other one might be through the expansion of the IRS. We'll have to see how that goes. But I just want to point out that it's an issue of culpability. Like, Alex Jones is not personally responsible for the individuals that acted in a wanton fashion, right? That acted belligerently, that ended up listening potentially to him or to other alternative media producers.
But Remington Arms is responsible for what Lanza is accused of doing.
So it's all about sort of what's the word I'm looking for? But shirking responsibility. That's the opposite of what we were talking about.
Or just going to wherever the deepest pockets are that might help to fulfill your agenda of also crushing the Second Amendment.
It's all combined. It's all combined. Yeah, and the idea is sort of this abdication.
It's like
That's
a
the word. It's an
swirl.
abdication of response because it's basically saying the responsibility isn't in the hands of the person who has agency because I guess they don't believe in agency. It's in the person of I guess the people they don't like.
Might makes right, Tony. It's good old fashioned social Darwinism, bro.
We call that ad baculum. It might make right.
It hits you with a stick and then you learn. That's what ad baculum is. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the walking stick. Appeal to the walking stick. That's correct.
Yeah. The carrot or the stick. They're just offering the stick these days. We're all out of carrots.
I guess they ran out of it because the tortoise on top of, the Rothschild on top of the tortoise ate them all.
I've got it. Your choice is carrot or the stick, and we're all out of carrots. That's what they're saying. That's like a paraphrase.
Carrot takes too long. That's a Fabian strategy. They need to hurry this up to get the Agenda 2030. But anyways.
Let's go to the clip of closing arguments and see, just from this, you're not in the jury. You haven't seen all the evidence. You've probably seen a lot more than all the evidence at this point. Go ahead and let's see how and notice the rhetoric, the placement of the speaker, the eye contact, the content of what they're saying, all these sort of things you can learn from because, life's a long game. You might need to know some of that stuff in the future. How to express yourself effectively to others and get them to take up your position as opposed to somebody who might be making up stuff against you, So let's go ahead and let's see how it rolls out.
Muted. Here we go.
Just give your attention to counsel, starting with plaintiff's counsel. Whenever you're ready, please. Take your time. Ron. Do you want time reserved?
Oh, yes, Judge, yes. Yeah, 30 minutes, Judge, for rebuttal.
Beg your pardon?
30 minutes for rebuttal.
Okay, Mr. Farrar, you're on top of that?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, whenever you're ready, counsel.
Thank you very much, Your Honor. Good morning, everybody. Good morning. I'm very happy to be able to have this opportunity to speak with you this morning. And I know that the families that you see here who have been here every day are very, very grateful to you for your attention and your concern throughout these weeks. I think we've seen just about every aspect of the human experience on display in this courtroom for the past several weeks. And if you're like me, as you've been listening to the testimony, there may be moments where you found yourself drifting to thinking about your own things, your own experience, what's important to you in your own life. And in opening statements, I told you that you had everything you needed to make your decision in this case because you're human beings. You understand what that means. You understand what's important in your life. Your parents, your children, your grandchildren. How you spent your time building a life for yourself and an identity. And there's some very basic principles that I think all of you understand. That you learn as kids, teach your children, teach your grandkids. Things that you know, even though all of you are in different stages of your life. Tell the truth. Don't hurt. Especially when you're down. Stand up to bullies. Because bullies won't stop, especially when being bullied makes them very, very rich. All of these things you know. But there are some things that you probably learned. Things that I didn't even appreciate until I sat through the testimony, and that is how far and wide and deep a lie can spread. Especially when it has the machinery behind it to push it for years and years, infecting parts of American life that are difficult to comprehend. You heard about an organization that was set up for that purpose. For the purpose of spreading lies like that as far and wide as possible. Why? Because the more people see it, the more people come to the website, the more people end up in the store, the richer it gets. And we're going to talk about all of that, but what I want to start with and just acknowledge is what we saw in this courtroom yesterday, which is that the lies that started on December 14, 2012 are continuing to this very day. In 2 months, it will be 10 years. 10 years since these families lost their loved ones. And even now, he's still doing it. I just want to give you a sample of this. Why don't we go ahead and play just a clip from what Mr. Jones said within hours of the shooting.
They have hit the ground running in a build-up, and I said, this is the attack. Look, people got to find the clips the last 2 months. I said, they are launching attacks. They're getting ready. I can see them warming up with Obama. They've got a bigger majority in the Congress now in the Senate. They are going to come after our guns, look for mass shootings. And then magically it happens. They are coming. They are coming. They are coming.
2 years later, it's the same thing. And by the way, you've seen dozens of videos. I'm going to show you a chart of all the different times over the years Alex Jones was pushing this lie. You've seen dozens of them, but just let's go to 2 years later, January 13th, 2015.
So Sandy Hook is a synthetic, completely fake, with actors.
Synthetic, completely fake, with actors. Now you've heard, some of Mr. Jones's preferred phrases. Synthetic, fake as a $3 bill, total hoax. And he repeats it over and over, including last week on his show. Let's go to September 29th, 2022.
It is synthetic as hell.
You saw that video yesterday. It's all made up. Now that I see how rigged this trial is, it's as synthetic as hell. You saw the video where he said not only is the trial rigged, the jury's rigged. All of you. The judge is a tyrant. That's what he does. Why? Because he knows he needs to maintain his credibility with his audience because they're everything to him, and we are nothing to him. So let's start from the beginning. You heard this testimony. You had millions of listeners by the time you were 24, right? Yes. And you were the beginnings of a media empire, right? Yes. This is the early 2000s. Mr. Jones starting to build methodically that audience that would come to him for the message that he spread on Infowars.com, that message being that there's a conspiracy, a global plot out to get you. A global plot out to get you, to enslave you, to kill you, people in power out to get you. And it's such a convenient message for him to send because every day he's got something new to share with the people that are coming to him about how they know that this is true. And he starts to build Infowars.com, PrisonPlanet.com, Prison Planet TV, the centerpiece of his media operation, the Alex Jones Show. Infowars Store, in the early days it was InfowarsShop.com. And you remember Clint Watts, our expert, he told you that this guy was perfectly situated to take advantage of the way stuff spread on social media. So he has Facebook, all those Facebook accounts, Twitter, YouTube, millions of views, building and building and building this organization to spread this message. Remember Clint Watts, the message. This is Alex Jones's testimony. And the message that you convey to your audience and have conveyed for the last 20-some years is that there's a group of international media, financial, and political elites that are conspiring to establish a global tyrannical government to enslave and ultimately kill people. Yes. Now, to you and me, that's a little far-fetched, right? But to his audience, especially the audience that is getting day after day after day, the same audience that he's telling, I'm the only one that's going to tell you the truth about this, that starts to sink in. Let's play just a sampling of the way he conveys this message, including on the day of the shooting.
They are are coming. They are coming. They are coming. They've already taken over healthcare. The premiums are doubling. They're bankrupting that. They're already shipped GM to China. They are going to gut this country. They're going to shut down the power plants. They're going to bankrupt us. They are re-educating us. Just like we were Ukrainians and they're Russians. They want us bankrupt. They want the counties and the cities bankrupted and federalized. The feds themselves run by globalists. What does the new magazine say? You get it by subscribing. You get 12 issues. Right away, this man wants your guns. And I read down here, they're declaring war on the Second Amendment, period. They are declaring war on the Second Amendment, period. They are coming after our Second Amendment. It is happening. They want to kill America in 2013. That is their goal. That is what they want. They are moving to do it.
They are going to kill America. There is a war. You hear him talk about this all. Info wars. Everything's a war. And I'm going to show you a video later of him talking about how he hits the barbed wire and his army comes in after him. And then a couple weeks later, as he's pushing that every single person who's brought this lawsuit is an actor, this is what he's saying to his audience.
I guarantee you they're getting ready for false flags. All the signs are there. And they're going to blame it on us. And we've got to instantly come out and not take the guilt they put on us. Minute one, when they blame us, we got to go, well, hey, you did it then. And then they go, how dare you? Well, you're saying we did it. No, we don't believe a thing you say. You did it. They'll go, that's outrageous. Well, you just said we did it. You did it. You did it. You did it. You have the history of staging stuff. You did it. You're the suspect. You're the suspect. You're the suspect, government. You're the foreign bank run collaborators. Get out of our country. Get out. Get out. Get out. Do you understand how dark it is? How far down the line we are? How late it is?
You're the suspect. You're the suspect. 5 years later, it's the same thing. Let's go to September 4th, 2018.
And these people are just your enemy. They hate America. They are congenital frauds. They literally have been trained to hate the country, to hate you and your family. They are the enemy of the American people.
Do you remember what Mr. Watts said about the importance of message? Fear, anger, demonization. That's the message. And who is he demonizing? Who is he saying are the enemies of America that his audience is at war with? These people. And his audience gets it. And he tells them that he's the one they can rely on. InfoWars is the house that truth built. The front line of truth journalism. You remember Ms. Paz was up here and said the one thing that Alex Jones told her in the however many minutes he gave her was, he's definitely not a journalist. Now, why was that important? Because he doesn't want you to think, he doesn't want you to hold him accountable for what he says. But what he tells his audience is that they can count on him for the truth in journalism. The Alex Jones Show is the daily developments and important guests to bring you the real truth and nothing but. The house that truth built. This presence, along with hard-hitting content and the courage to speak the truth, it's everywhere. This is Alex Jones. Right after he says, they staged Aurora, they staged Sandy Hook, the evidence is overwhelming.
They staged Sandy Hook, the evidence is just overwhelming. And that's why I'm so desperate and freaked out. This is not fun. You know, getting out here telling you this. Somebody's got to tell you the truth. Somebody's got to stand against these people. Somebody's got to do it.
And what did that kind of message and that kind of fomentation of anger and rage and distrust mean for him? His dad told you. And I'm going to skip to the middle of his answer. But in reality, it has to do with the fact that our customers are so loyal to us that they believe in what we're doing to such a degree that if we say something is good for you and it's a good value, they're going to buy it. And buy a lot of it. That's the audience that he was building. That's the profit that he was seeking in the run-up to the San Diego shooting. And he told us in his deposition, Mr. Jones, would it be fair to say that you expect among the millions of your listeners, many will believe that you are telling them the truth, right? Yes. And sometimes that truth that you tell them is pretty horrifying, correct? Yes. Free speech systems acknowledges that it works. Question, this message that he's been pushing out and telling his audience all these things that they have to fear. A, he has remedies for that, he'll sell them, and B, he's the only one that will tell them the truth about it. That strategy's been working for him, right? Answer? Well, if you're looking at the social media numbers and the visits to the sites, yes. And he knows darn well what kind of danger this represents for people who he targets. Because in 2011, he gave an interview with Rolling Stone, and this is what he said. Some unstable people are drawn to the bright flame of enlightenment, that is so-called conspiracy culture. Some trees are going to become uprooted in a storm like this. He's the one doing the uprooting. He's the one exploiting his audience and their fears and creating the storm. And so by the time December 2012 rolled around, this is the organization that he was sitting on. This is an organizational chart. You may remember when this came up. Because it was very, very important for the defense to try and suggest to you that this is just some fly-by-night operation. Alex Jones just gets up there and there's no rhyme or reason to any of it. It's very important for them to try and tell you that none of this is calculated.
LD, fast forward to the last 15 minutes of his argument.
Okay, one second. Even asked their own corporate representative. There's no organizational chart, is there? No, I haven't seen one. I get up here and I show her the organizational chart. I show her the organizational chart that InfoWars' own lawyer had seen. Because this is what an organization looks like that's ready to pounce. That has all the tools in place, all the people in place, ready to go. And if you look at the numbers that they provided from January 2009 to November, but that's the number we were able to present to you.
Rewind a couple minutes.
2012 and 2018 on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube alone. 550 million times. And it's not just one person he said it about. It's 15. Think about that. Whatever number you had in your mind, me, that lie about me to one person, multiply it by 550 million, and then multiply it by 15. Because the judge is going to instruct you that your job is to award fair, just, and reasonable damages. Nothing more, but nothing less. Nothing less. And if you thought it was reasonable in your own mind for a guy like me, who'd been lied about once, to be awarded whatever the number is, then that's reasonable for them. 550 million times minimum. And you may say that's astronomical. It is. It is. It's exactly what Alex Jones set himself up to do. That's what he built. He built a lie machine that could push this stuff out. You reap what you sow. You reap what you sow. And you might think, you know what? That's not enough. We know 550 million is just a fraction of how many people actually get that. But that's the number we were able to present to you because they didn't provide us with all the information we need and you just get to it. But when you think about the scale of the defamation, you can be instructed on how to think about it. Remember the lie I told you about? The lie that somebody is actually an abusive father? That's bad. That's bad. But what about the lie he said about them? They faked their 6-year-old and 7-year-old's death. They faked their sisters. They faked their wife's death. They faked their mom's death. They're actors. They're part of a plot. They're part of a plot to take your rights away. If you're just one uprooted tree, Mr. Jones' audience has been telling you for years that they're coming for you. These people who are just normal people become their enemy. They start to hunt them. That's the scale of the defamation here. And it wasn't just about some side issue. The lie went to the heart of who they are, the defining moment in their lives, the loss of a child. It went to the heart of who they are. That's defamation. So that's a baseline. That's a baseline. The second component of damages you're going to be asked to consider has to do with emotional distress. I want to read to you a section of instructions that Judge Bellis will give to you. In assessing the invasion of the plaintiff's privacy and their emotional distress damages, you may consider that it is already established that the defendant's conduct was extreme and outrageous. Indeed, in many cases, the defendant's extreme and outrageous conduct is clear evidence that emotional distress existed. This gets back to why I've spent so much time talking about how reprehensible and outrageous what he did was. Because you know from that of course it's going to cause people distress. The duration of the conduct. The defendant's conduct in spreading the statements and their actual spread. The harassment the plaintiffs endured. The plaintiff's fear of harassment. The nature and duration of the invasions of the plaintiff's privacy. The nature and duration of the plaintiff's emotional distress, including future distress. Isn't that what you heard about? This is the This is the part of the case that only you, as a group of people, can really understand what they've done. Francine and Mark both told you that, and Robbie, they told you that losing a child, especially in the way they lost their children, was bad enough. It was enough. But dealing with this, dealing with lies and harassment, even as you're preparing to bury your child or your mom or your sister or your spouse. Think about that. Robbie finding his wife curled up in a coat closet at Emily's viewing because she was terrified that people just in the days after the shooting were going to come and disrupt it. Want to see Emily's body. Nicole Hockley taking out that insurance policy on herself because she believes she's going to be killed to this day, sleeping with mace and bat and knife next to her bed. Mark Barden, scanning, constantly scanning who might be approaching them. Jennifer Hensel always looking in the back seat. Erica Lafferty receiving threats to rape her. She's moved 5 to 6 times in 10 years. She's on the run. The Parker family on the run. How can this be? Their lives were shattered on December 14, 2012. But Alex Jones has made it so they can't escape. They can't escape. Soto children in their own town of Stratford. Their own town. People who Vicky grew up with. So we trust you, I trust you to understand what that means. And let me just end with Robbie Amos. One of the things that Robbie said that stuck with me ever since he told me was the shame and the guilt he feels. Because if he just hadn't done that, if he had made that statement trying to eulogize his daughter to the world, maybe this wouldn't have happened. Think how he carries that, not just for his own family, but for every other family. Bill Oldenburg, same thing. Bill Oldenburg sat on the stand. And he told you that the worst part about this is the guilt he feels. Because if he had just put on his equipment, just put on his vest right away, maybe David Wheeler wouldn't have had to go through this. Because these people are struggling for answers. Why? Why? They're good people. These are good people. And what happened to them is not right. It is not okay. And it's going to be your job to make sure that Alex Jones, who has refused to even come to this courtroom to see the testimony of these plaintiffs, to understand the harm he has caused, that he gets it. It is your job to make sure he understands the extent of the wreckage he has caused. Because you know damn well he doesn't get it right now. He should. He should get it. Do you remember this? he brought a lawsuit for defamation while this lawsuit was pending. He himself recognizes that the words are so obviously hurtful that they require no proof that they caused injury in order for them to be actionable. And what was this harm? This catastrophic damage that Alex Jones suffered. A tweet with 20 retweets and 37 likes. Oh, he gets it. He gets it. But he doesn't care. And this is just getting back to Clint Watts, the $550 million. I wanted to show you this testimony. I'm sure you remember it. But when you compare that to the 20 tweets and Alex Jones, give me a break. But you know, Alex Jones is the victim, isn't he? But here's how you know why it's so important, why this case is historic, why you have an opportunity to do something as representatives of this community. Because I had Alex Jones on the stand, and I said, you're going to do it again, aren't you? This is a few weeks ago, and look what he is doing. Look what he's preparing his audience for. What is he conditioning them to believe? Which families is he going to hit the barbed wire and be a precision-guided munition on next? You think he takes any of this seriously? What do you think it means when he tells his audience that Judge Bellows is a tyrant? You think they know what that means? You think they get it?
I am so sick of the New World Order. I am so sick of this cult of psychopaths. I am so sick of their lies and their fraud. I don't believe anything they say. And I apologize for nothing I've ever done because I did it all from a place of purity, and I've been 98% accurate. You go to Yahoo, you go to Google, you go to Instagram, you go to Facebook, it's Alex Jones at the top, set against dead kids, families for weeks on, never said their names, never even talked about them, all made up. And it's like, oh, my kid died, oh, and Alex Jones caused it, and it's all loud. You're like, oh my God, Jones, you're under such attack. We better not be like you. I'm under attack because I expose these people. I'm just going to be completely honest. I totally enjoy it. I mean, I've reached that point of real peace where I don't just have peace with this, I enjoy it now.
I don't even know what to say about this. I really don't. Except that one thing is crystal clear. He's signaling to everybody in this globe he is going to do this again. He enjoys it. Think about the callousness that's required, the cruelty that's required to say something like that. After these families have been in here for weeks, telling you about the most intimate, private parts of their lives, explaining to you what they've been through, who they are. But even though he wasn't here and he didn't see it, he doesn't care. You saw it. You saw what he did. You saw they're going on 10 years of defaming these families. And it's not stopping. You remember Bill Oldenburg's testimony where he's talking about how it's going to keep going? He said it's not speculative. And you know it's not. It's going to keep happening and happening. Francine, Nicole, Mark, Jackie, they talked about what it means for their children, their surviving children, to know that they may be confronted just as they have been. Not even protectable. Why? Because this lie is out there, pushed by Alex Jones. So it's not just damages for the emotional distress they've suffered these 10 years. It's going to keep happening. And so after you've considered the damages for defamation pro se, and you consider the emotional distress they've gone through, make sure you remember that this is going forward. And this is their one chance, and your one chance to render a verdict on just how much devastation Alex Jones has caused. It's been a real privilege for us to represent these families. I can't tell you how fortunate and lucky we feel. And I think it's a real privilege for you too, to be in this position. You represent this community. What will you do? Will you render a verdict that finally forces Alex Jones to truly understand just how devastating his conduct has been? Because that's the only way. That is the only way he will stop. What will our community's verdict be on what's happened here? Who you saw here? I want to thank you very, very, very much. Thank you. Thank you.
All right, real
right, so
quick
we are going
before we play the defense's closing argument by Norm Pattis, I just wanted to point out a couple things because as you heard, there was no objections really during his closing argument. When he points out all those clicks in 2015, 2016, he's attributing those all to Alex Jones's InfoWars coverage of Sandy Hook. But I also recall a guy named Trump being on InfoWars and promoting Alex and that sort of thing. And that probably brought a lot of clicks too. They're not allowed to mention Trump or any of that in the trial. So they can just make it look like it's all Sandy Hook related. Like those 500 million clicks were all because he talked about Sandy Hook for 23 minutes over 10 years. The other couple things is the parents suffer unimaginable grief. They're already traumatized, losing a child or a spouse or a sibling. That's bad. Then people go out and say things that are not true, go to their houses, piss on their graves, a whole bunch of horrific stuff that was testified to through the trial that I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy.
That's terrible.
But that wasn't Alex's. He didn't do it. He was not the one doing all those things.
Nor did he tell people to do that.
Right.
He did not tell people to do that. That's the thing that's so frustrating.
Right. So to hold him accountable for that, that seems a little bit out there. I think one of the worst underreported parts of the whole situation is the siblings of the children who were lost, as an example, hearing the gossip in schools after, Fetzer's book and, Halbig's reports and these sort of things, and that getting back to those kids. Some of those families have had to move 5 to 8 times because of harassment. But insane. Trying to tie that harassment directly to Jones or his actions or him telling people that's not really there in the case, and that's their burden of proof.
Right.
But they don't
have to prove anything, though. In this case, there's already been a default judgment. So like they're trying to prove that the damages are so egregious, but that's just
and to set a precedent. And that's in the rules. You're not supposed to do these things. So we're going to hear Pattis also, since the plaintiff side opened up the rules. I think Pattis is going to say, oh, I can open the rules and read from what's going on here too. I think that's also part of his closing argument, if I remember correctly. And again, they're looking for $500 million to $7.8 billion. And that $500 million was like $1 for every click that InfoWars had for those 10 years or something like that.
He was right? He was making that sort of false equivalency. And the fallacy, this is a perfect example of a straw man, because they're making this massive assumption, essentially, that all those clicks, as you pointed out, were related just to, that's the summation of all social media content over how many years? And they're making it seem as though they don't talk about anything else. And anytime he tries to mention anything else, obviously it's struck from the record because it's not allowed to be submitted.
And if he's so guilty, why do they have to create a straw man? Why can't they just attack the actual evidence that was provided through discovery? They gave him all those records. Like there's a lot of files on file with the plaintiff from discovery, yet they said he didn't comply fully with discovery. And when you get into that, it's because he got banned from the internet, because Hillary Clinton said Sandy Hook, Alex Jones, and then all these companies went and banned him, took away, like he didn't have disaster recovery plan for redundancy of data. What do you think? A lot of businesses don't. A lot of business, especially the smaller businesses that blow up like that very quickly. Yeah, you've mentioned the operation they run. It's they do a great job for what they have, but sometimes it's very difficult to get those processes in place. You'd be surprised that even like what the company Tesla doesn't have as far as redundancy and recovery that my buddy was telling me about when he worked for Jeff Bezos' one company, Blue Origin. So it's just they're flying by the seat of their pants. And in this case, Alex got his britches caught on the barbed wire.
Yes.
Let's see if Norm Pattis helps him get over the wire or something else. We're gonna have to wait to see next week what the verdict is. But let's go right now to Norm Pattis closing arguments in Alex Jones Sandy Hook defamation trial, part 2. This is the Connecticut trial. 6 jurors left. There's supposed to be, I think, 12 angry people. That was the film, right? That's the newer remade version. It's like more social friendly. 12 angry people. Now there's only 6 maybe on the fence people. Man. We don't know how convinced these people are. We'll find out from the jury deliberations.
They only need an average, apparently, because you don't need it's as if every rule has just been thrown out because the case itself, as the judge points out, and I don't know if we're going to hear the sidebar.
It's a real anomaly.
Anomaly is an understatement for how weird this whole situation is.
Let's start with Pattis's. Let's start with his beginning, and then we'll see how far we get into it.
Sounds good.
Go. Please be seated. The record will reflect that the entire panel has returned. Just for your planning purposes, we will take our normal lunch hour. We may go a few minutes late depending where we are in the argument, but we will definitely have a solid hour for lunch. Okay? All right? Attorney Pattis, whenever you're ready, please.
It's still morning. Good morning. In many decades and hundreds of trials of doing this, I've never been prouder to be a lawyer than I am right now. And you're thinking, why? Because I believe in the rule of law. And the rule of law is under attack in this country. Some people believe it. Mr. Jones believes it. I'm here to defend Alex Jones. I'm here to defend free speech systems. In my opening statement, I began, and I'm going to read it because I wrote it then because I was worried I'd forget it. We live in times of deep political division in this country. One of the issues dividing us is guns, their possession, their use, and their control. The divides are deep, even dangerous. Don't let anyone tell you this trial is a means of addressing gun violence or political divisions. We're not here to make political statements, to reform the world, to take a stand against extreme speech. This trial is not a cultural moment. We are here because on another date and at another time, a court held Alex Jones and free speech systems liable for harming the plaintiffs. You are forbidden to speculate why that happened. Your only job here is to determine how much damage my clients caused each plaintiff, and then to assign a dollar value to suffering. The case comes down to money. How much money will each plaintiff get? We're asking you here
to follow the law and nothing but the law. Wait, before you play that, you will have in your jury deliberation room exhibit books. And you will have the documents that have been introduced, and you'll have pages that reflect videos. You've not been shown all of the videos in this case. You've been shown the videos the plaintiffs selected that most proved their points, and they've been able to argue a straw man. Alex Jones did all of this to set up the Sandy Hook families. He put a target on their back, and he monetized it. That's what you were told. I'm going to show you an exhibit. It takes about 19 minutes to play. I believe it's exhibit 45. Zach, please press play. Watch this video.
As all of our hardcore listeners know from their own research, this country is in the middle of a civil war against globalist forces that are openly trying to stop the populist Americana new renaissance that we are attempting to bring back into play. Free market, true open societies versus globalism and corporate crony capitalist tyranny. We have an overload of news and information, obviously, today. We have Democratic Party throws a new giant temper tantrum because their Russia investigation has come up 100% high and dry. They've now thrown a new giant temper tantrum to restart another fake investigation, this time a civil one, so they can continue to say there's an investigation. Oh, we're deposing this person, we're deposing that person. And the lawsuit is gigantic, making all sorts of claims of the criminal activities that went on with Trump, WikiLeaks, and the Russians with zero, not one scintilla of evidence. Amazing. The Russians did not hack the DNC. It was leaked out of the DNC. We know from the files released that have digital coding on them that they were downloaded at 6 times the speed of the fastest internet connection 2 years ago. You understand, folks? 6 times the fastest connection, still 4 times the fastest connection today. It was downloaded at point blank range, just like Snowden did in Hawaii inside the big NSA center. It was downloaded at point blank range. And now that's back in the news again today. Unbelievable disinformation. But notice, what did Trump say during the campaign? He said, I don't know the Russians or who else. Might be some fat guy in his mother's basement. For all I know, you can ping off anywhere in the world. There's no evidence it's Russia. But he said, but if it is the Russians, release it. It's about what's in the WikiLeaks. Not about changing the subject, as they always do, into who released it. What about all the crimes? And I heard Owen Schroyer did a great job yesterday during the broadcast when I took time off to do some family. Say that today on the War Room, he's going to spend an hour, maybe spend the whole 3 hours, getting into the WikiLeaks and the top 100 WikiLeaks, and then you calling in and mentioning what WikiLeaks you think are most important. Just like they hammer all this fake Russiagate stuff constantly, we should be hammering the bona fides, the bones, the guts, the reality of what is in those things and all the other leaks that they don't even deny are real. Sensational crimes. Sensational pay-to-play from the Russians and the Communist Chinese and all these big foundations. Billions of dollars going to Hillary. Hundreds of millions from the Russians. Yeah, they could give money to the Secretary of State to then give them 1/3 of our uranium. They did it. Absolutely. Do the Russians want to get our secrets and get our industry? Absolutely. That's what we do to them. The point is that the traitor is Hillary. So, you got the Democratic Party files monster temper tantrum because, as I said last week and this week, the wheels came off 6 months ago with the fake Russia investigation, but now it's really come up dry. It's moved on to the Arab Emirates and it's moved on to all these other places. So we're going to be getting into some of that as well. But this really shows how desperate they are. You know, Matt's a great producer in there, and he's really hopping mad over this Megyn Kelly thing and other stuff. He's just like, you got to cover this today, Alex. You got to touch one of the top stories in the country. Every channel is lying about you, local, radio, TV, everything. You've got to cover it because it's bigger than you, Alex. And, you know, he's right. He said, this is a chilling effect. This is so bad. He's like shaking with anger. I've never seen Matt angry like this. There's like 20 minutes of news clips attacking me. I can't get to it. It's just all lies, folks. But I'm going to try to go to some of it. But here's the bottom line. The media brings up Pizzagate and then misrepresents what I've said to beat me over the head and drag me to the mud. And then say that I need to be banned off the air. They bring up Sandy Hook and say that I say nobody died when I never said that. I played devil's advocate. They took it out of context. Megyn Kelly plays clips that are about Hillary being responsible for thousands of dead children in the Middle East. She edits that and then plays it when she was at Fox News saying that I was saying Hillary was killing kids in a basement. So the defamation is that they continue to bring up these cases, never letting me drop it. I don't think anything was going on at that pizza place. We investigated it. We walked it back. We clarified. I'm done talking about it. In fact, just take it off the screen. Because it overshadows all the real stuff going on that I've got stacks of in mainstream news here. And then you've got Sandy Hook, where we talk about the police stand down. We talk about the men in the woods with guns that were on the news on helicopter shots. We said there's anomalies here. And then some of the people thinking it was a total hoax began to think I was covering it up. And I went, wait a minute, I'm not covering anything up. And I'm done with this tar baby about a year into it. That's 4 years ago. And I constantly say, mass shootings really happen. The government stand down at Sandy Hook. They stand down in Florida. They try to take me off the air, try to take me off YouTube, saying I said nobody died in Florida. You know I didn't do that, and they're liars. So then they get 3 of the parents of the poor little children that died when another Prozac kid with a gun went and killed them and got the gun illegally. And the media exacerbates it. They bring it up and they say Alex Jones is attacking these families when it's the media dragging this out every week of every month for the last 5 years, saying this. The media never covered me in Sandy Hook at first. But they saw when I said I think people died there, because Paul Watson record for 4 years about that. I respect Paul. And so a lot of my listeners got mad at me saying, oh, you're covering it up. So they saw that as weakness in the media because I'm a real journalist. And they know full well. So I don't get equal time on Anderson Cooper or on Megyn Kelly or any of these programs. And they get these people up there with Anderson Cooper, and they say that I'm bringing this out and I'm victimizing them. Megyn Kelly called me in April of last year, early April. She said, I want to come to town. Well, you heard it. I secretly recorded it. And I said, listen, I'm not getting into Sandy Hook or Pizzagate. She goes, I'm not going to get into that. No. It's all about you and your custody battle and how interesting you are. You're such a man. I want to go out to dinner with you. And, man, you're really, all this other stuff. So I didn't record the first part where she was saying how good looking I was and stuff in the car. I was driving to work one Saturday. I said, let me call you back in 5 minutes. Because it was like, oh, you're just so manly. You're so. And I was like, you heard some of it. Once I got here, I recorded what was going on. I didn't have a recording app on my phone. I have like the voice memo thing, but it doesn't record phone calls. So I had to get another company phone and then record it. And I knew it was a total setup. Then I'm like, oh, really? Tell me about how it's 6 a.m. again, sweetheart? So you can read it. Alex Jones, Megyn Kelly, full interview leaked. You can go read that, listen to it, see it. So I'm saying I will not talk about Sandy Hook. Do you understand, honey? Oh, yes. Then she has the bold cojones to go on her TV show yesterday morning with some of the parents and say, isn't it horrible he keeps bringing it up? Isn't it horrible he's sending crazy people to attack you? I'm not covering it. I'm not bringing it up. I'm telling Megyn Kelly I don't want to talk about it. She's here a year ago. In the 8 hours she interviews me to edit it together, and I keep saying, I think Sandy Hook happened. Well, why'd you say this? Why'd you say that? I said, well, I questioned some of it, what was going on early on because of anomalies and a stand down. Edits that together to reissue it and put it out. The woman is the consummate snake. She is in my view, a corrupt, evil, lying lawyer masquerading as a journalist who is a monster affront to the truth, who wants to create a chilling effect to shut down alternative information news because her ratings are in the toilet, all the rest of MSM. Stop victimizing the people of Sandy Hook and the people of Pizzagate. Stop it. So Donald Trump's been in office less than a year and a half, and like Lazarus, America has crawled out of its tomb economically, culturally, spiritually in many respects. We've really turned the corner. Lazarus has a heartbeat. He looks like hell, smells bad, but he's on the mend. And the banshees, the vampires, are going into connection fits of intimidation, of bullying, of just going wild. And a lot of Americans are saying, I'm going to keep my head down and see who wins this. You're not Americans if you do that. America is America because we had guts. We stood up. The whole world, every major historian said, we were smart, hardworking, and meaner than hell, stubborn like a mule, didn't back down. That's what built it. That's why, on average, we've got all this wealth. It's because we're not easy to push around. Well, I see myself as a throwback then. But America was the vanguard, the cutting edge. We're not going back to American values. We are getting back to the future, back to the real agenda that was making us so successful. Coming up, Roger Stone is listed in the giant lawsuit from the Democratic Party. They already had Obama's law firm group that he founded 1 month before he left office to, quote, stop the Trump agenda. Remember that headline. In fact, type that in. It's from CNN. Obama founds legal group to stop Trump agenda. Didn't say Russia, to stop Trump. They developed little breadcrumbs to put out the new fake suit, and the Democratic Party, with all its money, gets behind it to crush these individuals. You talk about Federal Elections Commission issue. They shouldn't be able to do that. Should the Republicans be able to fund all these people so they can defend themselves? Oh, no. The Democrats will say, no, no, no. We can use our money to sue you, the deep state, but you can't use any government money to stop us. Roger shows the next segment. But let's get back briefly to Megyn Kelly. I may just play a few minutes of this, though. It really is hard to watch. CNN, NBC, all of them are in the tank. They admit that. And they're doing everything they can to try to shut down liberals, conservatives, you name it. In fact, there's a big hubbub on the internet today that all of these mainline Democrats who are very, very popular but have their own shows, like Jimmy Dore and others, CNN is now pushing to have them blocked, their monetization taken, and to have that removed. Now, CNN admits a month ago they've been lobbying to have us removed, and then lying about what we've said to try to set the case for that. So they defame us, and they try to silence us so they can tell lies about us and no one can respond. Just like I got hundreds and hundreds of media requests saying, what is your statement, what is your response on Monday? And I sent the media a video response, and still, for days after days, they say, oh, Jones didn't respond. Jones didn't respond. Jones didn't respond. Megyn Kelly at least said, oh, he did respond on his YouTube. Lady, I'd have got on an airplane and come up there and got in the studio with you and the father of one of the victims. I'd have said, sir, I've been saying for years that I'm sure people died there. And I never said for sure nobody died. I said that I played devil's advocate and said I could see why some people don't believe the government because it's lied about babies and incubators. But it's been edited and then it's brought back up like I'm bringing it back up. I'd say, Megyn, you told me before you came here we weren't going to get into Sandy Hook. But then you got into it and then you say I'm a horrible person, bring it back up. You're the horrible person. Ladies and gentlemen, I am not going to be a statute in the law. They want the Alex Jones statute to preemptively ban people and preemptively ban questioning public events. They don't want you to question their narratives when they put out their narratives of chemical gas attacks, and 3 times it turns out to be the rebels. We're not sure this time. It's still up in the air. The but they have the motive. And Senator Paul and all these other generals say that Assad doesn't have the motive, and the rebels have been caught staging stuff before, and they've been putting out fake videos of gas attacks and admitting it's fake. I mean, this is getting crazy. And what does it say in internal Google documents from a year ago? We want Jones shut down because he changed the narrative on Syria chemical attacks being staged. They don't want me here, so you don't have a voice, so we can talk about this. There's another article on Infowars.com. CNN associates Infowars with pedo channels of liberal channels that are popular, but that are independent and anti-war. They're being shut down. They're being blocked. And the left is so upset that people like Jimmy Dore has left the Young Turks, and he's more popular than them now, and that they want him off the air. That's what this is all about. I've invited Jimmy Dore on the show. It doesn't matter, we disagree on 80% of stuff. We agree, and he points it out, that they're shutting down conservatives and liberals that are non-interventionists. CNN, and compares this to Nazis and pedophiles in the same newscast. I've got a lawsuit. I've got a real defamation suit. Because this stuff is causing damage with advertisers openly saying they're saying this so we lose advertisers. You understand what we're saying here? They say malice aforethought and do harm. They compare us to pedophile sites, white supremacist sites, who, by the way, have a right to operate. I don't agree with it. They have a right. Pedophile sites don't. And then say we should be taken down. That's all in a CNN report last night. This group that force feeds itself to you at hotels and bars and restaurants and train stations and bus stations and airports that you just can't get away from. It's like syphilis or gonorrhea or herpes. It won't go away, and it's just always there like a cold sore coming up. CNN is raping this country, raping the First Amendment, and it's all part of this big deep state constellation attack that's going on. Let's play some of this. This is Megyn Kelly. Father of slain Sandy Hook first grader Alex Jones must come clean on his lies. So they accused me of being a liar and calling them liars in the suit. It was filed in Travis County on Monday. They say also that I must do a retraction, and I refused. They sent the letter last Wednesday. It had a month for me to do an apology or retraction, but I can't apologize or retract something I didn't do. Then they instantly file it, say that I'm not apologizing, say that I'm saying nobody died, and then saying, why won't he go away? Why won't he stop saying and stop bullying us, Alex? Well, my audience knows what really happened. This is worldwide news, from Australia to Taiwan to England. Sandy Hook father calls out Alex Jones on Megyn Kelly. It's amazing. Megyn Kelly, like a vampire, has been on this story and bringing it up and misrepresenting what I've said to hurt me. And she brings the pain of the families again. And I'm sure they're smart people, these families. You know, they don't want this pain of their family and the memory brought up. I'm not bringing it up. Except when they're in the news and the media is there saying I've said things I didn't say. So I'm going to ask the families to actually look at what I've said and to come on this show. But you notice I'm not invited on any of these shows. It's all got to be one-sided so that Megyn Kelly can lie to everybody. Roger Stone's coming up. I'm going to probably put on the end of this some of the clips, but it's just insane. I probably should shoot a whole special report on this Megyn Kelly thing, because they're the ones bringing it up. They're the ones misrepresenting and then saying I am. It's total and complete.
We are here for a hearing in damages, and the law limits what I can and cannot argue. I'm not arguing that this is a political case. I showed you that exhibit so that you recognize some of the clips, snips you saw. You see them in context. And does that really sound like the kind of man who put a target on the family's back? Does it sound like somebody who sat up at night deciding I can monetize the family's grief? If it sounds that way to you, then you'll do what you think is appropriate. You will see a series, and you have in this trial seen a series of videos, small segments of larger videos, They're like 1A, 1B, 1C, 1E. If you're in the jury room and you want to see the truth, the whole truth about Alex Jones, ask to view a couple of those videos. Zach, can you show us 1E?
This is the attack. Look, people got to find the clips the last 2 months. I said they are launching attacks. They're getting ready. Hanging up with Obama. They've got a bigger majority in the Congress now, in the Senate. They are going to come after our guns, look for mass shootings. And then magically it happens. They are coming. They are coming. They are coming. They've already taken over healthcare. The premiums are doubling. They're bankrupting that. They're already shipped GM to China. They are going to gut this country. They're going to shut down the power plants. They're going to bankrupt us. They are re-educating us. Just like we were Ukrainians and they're Russians. They want us bankrupt. They want the counties and the cities bankrupted and federalized. The feds themselves run by globalists. What does the new magazine say? You can get it by subscribing. You can get 12 issues. Great way. This man wants your guns. And I break down here, they're declaring war on the Second Amendment, period. They are declaring war on the Second Amendment, period. They are coming after our Second Amendment. It is happening. They want to kill America in 2013. That is their goal. That is what they want. They are moving to do it. Send your tips to Real Alex Jones on Twitter. Tell me what you think.
You've seen that video any number of times, twice now this morning, and how many times during trial? I don't know. Take a look at one while you're deliberating and ask yourself whether that's the conduct of a person who put a target on the back of families he'd never met. He was reacting. He told you from the stand. Mr. Maddie asked him, "You care about your integrity more than anything, don't you?" "No," he said, and I'll do my best Alex impersonation. "I care about smacking the globalists." They ridicule that. That's their right. There's a larger context for the speech than the speech that has been presented to you here today, and it's in evidence. All you have to do is look at it. They're all plaintiffs' exhibits. They're not my exhibits. They picked and they chose what served the narrative, their narrative. All of us, I think, some of you are a little bit younger. All of us recall where we were the morning of December 14th, 2012. And you heard news that you just couldn't imagine to be true. I was pacing the halls of another courthouse on the other side of the state awaiting a verdict in yet another case. And I thought, my God, how can this be? Children murdered in a school. My first reaction was fear for my client. It was a murder case. I wondered whether the jury would hear that and hold the gun against him. I'm old, my kids are gone, my thoughts didn't turn to them. Mr. Jones' first thought turned to his narrative, the deep state. Mr. Maddie showed a statement he made about a global conspiracy of financial and government elites that want to that want to control, enslave, and kill us. There's a crisis going on in this country. I led my opening statement with it. I give it to you now. Are these the words of a man who, for the sake of a dollar, targeted these families? Or are they the words of a man who's lost trust in our basic institutions? Over the portal, the doorway of the United States Supreme Court are the following words: equal justice under law. Equal justice under law. Every person in this country accused of anything has a right to come into this courtroom and rely upon the rule of law as a defense. And every person, at least in most cases, has a right to come to a jury and ask the jury to evaluate the case under law. Mr. Jones is doing that. Did he take the stand and say, in your presence, in the presence of Judge Bellis, that he believes Judge Bellis is a tyrant? Yes, he did, and he does. He has his reasons. They're not for you to consider. Did he stand in this courtroom and go toe-to-toe with Attorney Maddie when Attorney Maddie launched an assault on him? That seemed to be a little bit more than was called for. Yeah, called him an ambulance chaser. He said, nobody complained about others when they did similar things. That was an ugly display. I'm not sure why it happened, but it did. But you saw it. And I was reminded of the words of Aristotle, candidly, and what Aristotle said about anger. And I'm going to read it so I don't get it wrong. I might be Greek, but I'm not as smart as he was. Anyone can become angry. That is easy. But to be angry with the right person, to the right degree, and at the right time, and for the right purpose, and in the right way, that's not within everyone's power, and it's not easy. I would suggest that a good part of the plaintiff's lawyer's case in this matter was an effort themselves to gin up anger, because this is a hearing in damages. And the angrier you get, the more money you will give. You're sort of like a pinball machine. Put enough anger in here, pull the lever, and maybe all that money they talked about will pop out. It's not the law. The judge will tell you the law, and if I misread this, listen to the judge. I can in Connecticut, if not America. And I'm not apologizing for it for one moment, because I trust you. I trust you. I trust you. I trust each and every one of you. We've sat through a veil of tears in this courtroom that could not help but have stirred your emotion. Could not help but to have stirred your sympathy. Could not help but to give you a bias against Alex Jones. The judge will tell you, sympathy, bias, and emotion don't play a role in a hearing in damages. I didn't write the law. I'm a lawyer. You must follow it. You must follow it. How much damages were really proven in this case? They've given you some numbers. I'm not going to comment on their numbers. Well, I said that, and now I'm getting ready to do so. They've given you some numbers, and they've given it to an estimate and basically said it's up to you. Now it is. But they didn't talk to you about everything you're going to be asked to decide. And I want you to ask yourself why. Who's in it for the money here? Who's in it for the money here? I'm not going to pick on the plaintiffs. You notice I hardly questioned any of them. I'm a father too. I cannot fathom the grief that these people have endured in the loss of their child. You heard gripping testimony. They lost their grip on the world. I could go moment to moment, and I tried not to think beyond the next step because I did not know what would happen. I lost my moorings. They lost their hearts, a part of their soul. Alex Jones didn't kill their children. You never heard the name from the plaintiff's lawyer. Adam Lanza did that. Alex Jones reacted from afar because he thought it was another sign of his conspiracy. And the judge will tell you that as a result of a ruling on another day, Jones knew it to be a lie. That's what the judge will tell you. But you will evaluate the evidence in this case and reach conclusions about how persuasive the case that the plaintiffs put on is. That's your job. Not mine, not theirs. Now, when you go back into the jury room, you're going to be shown a form. It's a verdict form. And you're going to be asked plaintiff by plaintiff to make decisions about a dollar amount to give them for damage to their defamation, slander damages, a dollar amount for emotional distress. And suggestions were made about how to arrive at that sum. Depending, 550 at a minimum, 8-point-something billion, I think is what it comes to, multiplied times 15. It would take a person earning $100,000 a year, hundreds of years, to make $550 million. Where did that number come from? And what didn't the plaintiff's lawyers tell you? They told you you're the conscience of the community, hold Alex accountable, make a point. They never talked about the damage that he actually caused these folks in this hearing of damages. You heard from no physician. You saw no medical bill. You heard nothing about a lost wage. No receipt for anything has been put before you. You'll have some anecdotal evidence in the form of affidavits in the jury room. They may have bought a security system, but they're not asking for economic damages. They're asking for damages for their distress. And from the plaintiff's perspective, you can't give enough. You have to do this, they told you in opening statements, to stop Alex Jones, but that's not why you're here. You're here to award a fair, just, and reasonable amount. And I can see some of you looking at me with some skepticism, thinking, what do you call a lawyer at the bottom of the ocean a good start? No, I am here to vindicate the promise of equal justice under the law for a despised human being. And there is no place on earth that I would rather be than right here, right now, with you, urging you to do the right thing. Because when you do the right thing and you decide this case according to law, you make the world a better place. You, as jurors, are the hope of our community. In a time of deep divisions and anger and the sort of stuff that you see Alex talking to his millions of people on the air, you get to speak truth to rage. You get to speak truth to plaintiffs' lawyers. Here's what they didn't tell you when they were asking you to pull the casino lever on money. You also get to decide a simple yes or no question here. Should Alex Jones pay punitive damages? Why did they leave that out, do you suppose? I'm going to tell you, I got my hunch. There's no money in that. The money, the judge will tell, punitive damages is an award of attorney's fees and costs. That's not going to be $100 million, $200, I think. There are a lot of lawyers here from that firm, some at the table, some in the audience. It's not going to be $100 million. So they gin up the compensatory damages number and say, give us all you can imagine. It's up to you. You decide. Is $550 million the minimum? Maybe $8 billion is the maximum. You decide. And do it as the conscience of the community to send a message and so forth. That's what punitive damages are for. The judge will tell you there's a difference between compensatory and punitive damages. If you think Alex Jones deserves to be punished within the meaning of the law, and again, equal justice under law. That's all we have. Any one of us could be brought into a courtroom tomorrow or the next day for an act or omission, real or imagined. Any one of us. When it matters, you want someone here. I'm on the barbed wire, as it were. I'm here for Alex Jones. I'm here asking you for a verdict according to the law. Is there something wrong with that? Is there? Let's take a look at the evidence that you were shown. I'll be honest with you. I'm not going to say much about the plaintiffs. Again, I remind you, I didn't cross-examine. Well, what do you say to a woman who loved her child? We had hours of what amounted to memorial service here. The memorial service, perhaps the group of them never got to have for their children in 2012. And the portrait that emerged is that these were the luckiest children alive. They were much loved, doted, cared for, and their parents wanted nothing more than to be good parents for them. And then, according to the plaintiff's theory, Alex woke up. Within hours, he heard about this and he reached the conclusion, I must target them for a buck. That's their claim. But they produced what I assume is the best case they could marshal. The very best case they could marshal. I'd submit to you they're lucky they're here on a hearing in damages. Let's talk about their evidence. And you heard about it this morning. Mark Mills, remember him? He's the guy who in February of 2014 crashed a Super Bowl press conference. 9/11 was an inside job by the government. Alex admired that. He talks. Gee, we should talk later. Matthew Mills turns up at a Soto road race, and they want you to believe Alex sent him. Turned up in November of 2015. How many months later? Was there any evidence that Mills was on the payroll? Did they produce it? They elected. They didn't have to put on evidence of this sort in a hearing of damages. But they elected to put it on, and I think I'm within my rights to comment
I
on
have to
it.
object at this point.
Sustained.
As to Wolfgang Halbig and Dan Badandi, is there any evidence that they ever visited a family member?
Just another saying.
All right, let's move on, Counselor.
A business card on a windshield, who put it there?
Objection. Same.
Alex Jones didn't invent the internet. Alex Jones didn't invent the divisions in this country. Even Clint Watts had to acknowledge the following. You'll remember Clint. He's the guy who went to West Point, then did a brief stint in the FBI, and then went somewhere else, and went back to the FBI, and now formed a consulting firm. Got paid $925 an hour to come here and tell us about messenger, medium, and method. And he talked about fear. And I asked him about the relationship between fear and anger, and he really couldn't comment on that. But I did follow up with another question. Mr. Watts, are you saying that Alex created this fear in people, or was he responding to fear that was already there? And he couldn't say. I thought Watts' testimony was amazing, frankly. Watts is a social media expert. He got his chops studying Al Qaeda, he told you. And then once Al Qaeda was struggling with developing its presence in the world online, he turned his focus to ISIS, another shadowy group in the Middle East. Both are groups that recruited people using fear, anger, demonization by way of charismatic messengers to get people to do things. Kill us. That's what terrorists do, right? And then he also said he offered his services to others, to businesses, to understand how social media could yield networks, how social media could yield influence in the world. And he never really took a position on what he thought of Alex Jones. Is Alex Jones a terrorist who died? Is Alex Jones a businessman who kept his business afloat by appealing to the fear of people he saw in the world for the reasons that you saw on Exhibit 45? This is not a case about politics. I remind you about that. It's a case about how much money will compensate the plaintiffs. You saw videotapes, ugly videotapes, and you'll see them again in rebuttal, I suspect, of Alex taunting Robbie Parker. And your heart went out to Robbie Parker, as did mine. He is a good and decent man. He did not deserve any of this. You heard testimony about emails. You heard testimony about comments on memorial pages. It's all but just a few that were apparently unearthed last month. You didn't see these emails they received. You didn't see the letters they received. You didn't see the notes left on the door. One of them was down in North Carolina, and somebody said, "Do you go to church?" I wasn't inspired to be flip and use humor. Was it a Satanist? No, that's Alex's fault. No video clips of the harassment, no police reports, no law enforcement officers, no court records about what happened to Mr. Mills after he was arrested, what he was arrested for, even if he was convicted. No one to corroborate the plaintiff's complaints but themselves, one after the other. And it all started to sound the same. Ask to see some of the testimony or hear some of the testimony back, and what you'll find is it was an average of 27 minutes in each plaintiff's testimony before they got to Alex Jones. And they always skipped over the day. And there was a highly stylized presentation of the evidence. It sounded the same, witness by witness by witness by witness by witness, and it was always the same sort of complaints. And it's all Alex's fault. Alex invented fear. Alex invented anger. Alex invented what's wrong with this world. Kill Alex and we'll all live happily ever after. Do you believe that for one moment? No doctor's bills, reports. Very few mentions of treatment. Bill Oldenburg, the FBI agent, said he went to get AEP treatment, EAP treatment, employee assistance treatment, or talk to somebody for 6 hours or so after the shooting, or 6 sessions or so rather, sometimes in mail, on the phone, sometimes in person. Then years later, he did it again. And his complaint is that he's mistaken for Bill Wheeler, and for this he needs millions. An FBI agent. He's a hero. So was every other law enforcement officer that went there that day. None of us would want to walk into that veil of trauma, not for one moment. I thought Watts' testimony was interesting in another way. I asked him, Mr. Watts, you've read Shoshana Zuboff's book, The Age of Surveillance Capital. No, I haven't. You haven't? No, but I know what surveillance capital is, he said. And we talked about it. It's the marketing of our worst emotions, usually by social media companies, so that they can get data about us to manipulate us and sell us things. That doesn't make me Alex Jones or a conspiracy theorist. That's the reality of where we're living right now. That's why there's so much debate about social media. No lawyer in Connecticut or anywhere can walk into this courtroom and expect anything but scorn. And I will be attacked by Mr. Koskov in his rebuttal to me. It'll be Mr. Pettis that, Mr. Pettis this, all in an effort to gin you up and get you angry. It doesn't mean a thing here for the plaintiff's lawyers if it doesn't go ka-ching.
So I'm going to just one moment, please. Attorney Pettis.
Yes, Judge. I'll move on.
No. Stop the clock. I won't use your time on this. Please refrain from any further personal attacks or comments about the plaintiff's lawyers or their law firm. It's highly improper. Let's move on. We talk about the plaintiff's case. I don't want to hear it again.
Yes, Judge. I'm not Alex Jones. I don't hold this judge in contempt. I believe in equal justice under the law. But I also believe in your unique powers in jurors to use common sense and to evaluate the evidence in this courtroom and to evaluate the proceedings in this courtroom. I'm not asking you to endorse Alex's decision to erupt at the end of what I would call a vicious riff and cross-examination. I'm not asking you to excuse his decision not to come back to court. He believes it's a rigged system. You heard him say it. He believes you're rigged. You know better. Each of you knows better. And you will restore some confidence in some people, including viewers, by returning a calm and dispassionate verdict. It's not as though Mr. Jones didn't turn up to this trial at all. My recollection is he was cross-examined for the better part of the day. A day. The plaintiffs could have asked him anything they want. Right? I think. I would have objected, certainly, if I thought it was objectionable. They never asked him about his net worth. They never asked him what expenses it took to operate his place. They never asked him what it would cost to run an organization with 70 people. They never showed him an organizational flow chart that turned up somewhere from someone through my office that no employee in that firm ever said they saw.
Objection. It was
The jury's memory will serve them.
It's a single talent business, the father told you. It all revolves around Alex Jones. I told you in the opening statement he's a Dennis the Menace type character, a whirlwind of activity. You saw it in this courtroom, you saw it on the videotapes. Not everyone's cup of tea, but millions of people are tuning into him, and they're tuning out of what he calls mainstream media. Why? People have lost confidence in public institutions. The way this case broke, because it's a default, because of the various rulings from the court, I can't say much more than I've said. or Alex Jones. But when I am attacked by Mr. Koskoff, be assured that there are things I would say if I could. I'm going to have to trust you, as Mr. Jones will, the community will, and everyone will, to follow the law and render a verdict in this case that gives Mr. Jones the plaintiffs rather in this case, fair, just, and reasonable compensation. You're to consider emotional distress under the court's instructions, reputational harm under the court's instructions, and then a yes or no question on punitive damages. You are not to mix apples and oranges here. You do not award punitive damages under the guise of compensatory damages. It's simply not your role. May I have one moment, Judge?
Take your time.
Just want to take one look at my notes on the opening argument to see if there's anything that I need to address. There is. You were shown social media impressions, and Mr. Watts claimed that there were lots of them, 550 million. Have any of you ever visited a website that you like? Do you do it more than once a year? Do you do it more than once a day? I mean, they said 9.2 billion impressions over a 3-year period. That's more people than are alive. Are they claiming aliens from another planet looked at some of Mr. Jones's things? You just can't unpack these numbers in a sensible way. And they had the opportunity to do so. It was their burden of proof. You look at the engagements growing, and Zach, I'm going to need you to show us Exhibit 183. This is a plaintiff's exhibit. They're talking about how, I gather, what they're going to do to get ads. For the 20 plus years, Alex Jones has stood voicing the questions of the ignored and forgotten and the unappreciated. And with the help of experts, whistleblowers, and insiders, Alex Jones no longer stands alone. He now has a vast network behind him with a wide range of guests like Ted Nugent, Roger Stone, Megadeth frontman David Mustaine, director David Lynch, and Mike Judge. From Charlie Sheen's famous Tiger Blood rant to Donald Trump's promising, "I won't let you down, Alex. Your reputation is impeccable." Alex Jones and InfoWars is firmly rooted in American culture. InfoWars is no longer on the fringe. We're now one of the leaders in the new age of media, or the new wave of media. I read you that. It's in evidence. It's not my exhibit. You've already seen it. And you see this chart. When they were trying to show you that Alex does everything for the sake of a buck, and they showed his numbers grow from 14 at 2.2 billion, 15 to 2.9, and 4.1 in 2016. We all know what happened in 2016. The man who said, "I won't let you down, Alex," got elected.
Sustained.
This is not an action to compensate the folks at Sandy Hook for the loss of their children. Alex Jones is not Adam Lanza. This is not an action to compensate Ms. Hensel for the suicide of her husband, Jeremy Richmond. There's been no evidence about the cause of that. This is not an action to make a political statement to silence Alex Jones, no matter how satisfying that might feel to you or to the plaintiffs, and perhaps to others. I suspect Alex Jones will never be silenced. He's a mad prophet, warning of a dystopia to come. Like the protagonist in Orwell's 1984, when everything was about information control, and it went into your room and the television was watching you. Like Aldous Huxley in Brave New World, when he talked about Soma, and if we could just drug ourselves into compliance, we'd accept any direction. Like Margaret Atwood in The Handmaid's Tale, where she talked about how a patriarchal society would use women as nothing other than breeding machines. There have always been mad, creative geniuses in the world who feared what was to come. And they speak loudly, and we have choices about whether to listen. But nothing in their speaking gives them the right to hurt others, and I'm not suggesting they do. I'm simply suggesting to you that if you fairly, calmly, and dispassionately look at the evidence in this case, you'll see that although it's a hearing in damages, it's a hearing in damages for an extraordinary purpose. Consider, you saw 1E. They're coming for our guns. It's an attack on the Second Amendment. I had one of the family members up, I believe it might have been Mr. Wheeler. He watched the video, still couldn't tell us what he thought Alex's position was. People are filling in for the president, giving a national address on gun control. They can't have feelings about what Alex knows about guns. Nobody heard of Alex until somehow in 2018 they all got together somewhere and decided to sue him.
Objection.
Sustained.
Jeremy Richmond told you why he why he took action against Alex.
Jeremy Richmond is deceased.
Thank you. You're exactly right.
Please.
Robbie Parker told you why he took action. Parkland shooting. I would suggest, and I'm going to be ridiculed for this and maligned, and walked on one edge of what, my name dragged through the mud yet again. That's okay. Did they exaggerate some of the harm here for the sake of politics, for the sake of guns, and the desire to make sure that this never happens to someone again, that no one else ever loses a child? Yeah, it makes you uncomfortable when I say that. I see you looking away. But it's a fair question, and it's one you have to wrestle with. Because otherwise, where was all that mountain of proof about the things they told you about and didn't show you? The unnamed people who Alex sent because he put a target.
Sustained.
Equal justice under the law. I've been doing this, I'm zeroing in on 70, and I've been in hundreds of trials, and I've seen thousands of jurors, and I've never been prouder than I am at this moment. Because the easy thing to do would be to tar and feather Alex Jones. But it's not what the law requires. The law requires that you serve equally, coolly, dispassionately, to evaluate the evidence and render a fair, just, and reasonable verdict. I'm going to end this with what I call the trial lawyer's prayer. The law is my shepherd, and I shall not want. It makes me plead in the presence of jurors. It leads to justice, and it restores my soul and the soul of the community. Your soul, your soul, your soul. Yea, and this case has never been truer than this case. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for the jury will hear me. It's judgment and good sense that save me and comfort me. The court prepares a table for me in the presence of my enemies. I will be shrouded in justice, my cup runneth over. And mercy, perhaps, goodness, mercy, perhaps justice will follow me all the days of my life. And I will dwell in a court forever, but maybe not. Thank you. My time here has ended, as probably will end soon in life in general. And when you get to 70, you start to wonder. Thank you for your kind attention. I beg you, follow the law in this case. Put aside passion, prejudice, and sympathy. When I'm attacked, I warned some of you during jury selection, it's not a popularity contest. Yeah, they're nicer guys. Okay, I get that. But in the dark night of the soul, when they come for you, you want a lawyer at your side. I'm proud to be at Alex's side. If he asks you, I ask you for justice.
So we will see how that turns out. Maybe in a couple days. I would assume sometime the next week. By the next episode, we should know what the outcome is of that case. I also saw in the Rockfin chat, or in the chat, yeah, I think it was a Rockfin tip. Someone had mentioned Frances Stoner Saunders. I have several of her books. This is one, Who Paid the Piper, the CIA and the Cultural Cold War. She did another one on the Cultural Cold War, might even be called the Cultural Cold War, if I remember correctly. And then Alfred McCoy did several books on CIA, opium, narco-terrorist trafficking, which is also referenced heavily in the Whitney Webb 2-volume set. McCoy books are in the other library over there. I don't have time to go get them, but this is a good one to start out with, and it's a sizable read. There's a lot of juicy stuff in this. We don't have time to cover it tonight, but I did want to give it honorable mention because I saw that come across in a text. So thank you for that comment. Who else do we have tonight, LD? Because I'm thinking, are there any other clips that we need to play before we get to the part where we thank everybody?
Not specifically. Obviously, there's always clips that are going to be left out. Change my camera here. There is an honorable mention of a good clip by Russell Brand this week in regards to climate change and some of the facade associated with it that I know we all watched and found interesting. And the traditional show card, because of extraneous circumstances in regards to my travel itinerary. Obviously, I didn't get a traditional show card done, but I'm not sure I will for the past week. But for obviously next week and moving forward, there will be a traditional show card as there always is.
And we'll have references for everything we played tonight.
Yeah, we've been documenting.
You just won't have the stuff we didn't get to play like you usually do.
Correct. That's correct. So we're referencing the stuff we played tonight, but we won't have all the list of all the various clips we found interesting from throughout the week that we didn't play.
And Tony will be there, and I'll be here Tuesday night for Town Hall.
That's correct. I'm going to extend my stay just for a couple more days, and we're going to do a town hall together. And so if anyone wants to come and ask some questions in regards to the content of what we discovered or what were mentioned about regards to going down some deep dives into medieval history in regards to Templars, Knights of Malta, Knights of Hospitaller, which I know there's been a lot of questions about that. We might do a little bit of that and also cover some of the stuff that I want to cover a little bit of, what we talked about earlier in regards to the naval intelligence, what happened, some of the stuff that we mentioned that we couldn't really get to tonight that I think will be, as well as maybe get a bit more into Hector's story and what happened, because you showed me your script. Maybe we can show some of the GTW subscribers some of the work you did in regards to that script from the interview you did with the whistleblower.
Hey, I'll give a little tip because it's like the end of the show.
Oh yeah,
it's not. We're not there yet. Don't go clicking away because there's like good stuff yet to happen. In future weeks, hoping to get Hector Bareas, mentioned earlier tonight, on as a guest. My buddy John and I were the cinematography team, did the interview with him. But John also has some other interesting hobbies, and Tony's wearing one of John's hobbies right now.
That's correct.
His predilection has turned. He used to just be a standard like audiophile nerd like 20 years ago. And then recently he's been doing like headphone mods. So this past week I had 2 boxes that showed up and 2 sets of headphones. So I plug them in. I start listening to my favorite music. And I was like, wow, it sounds like you're there. Like, what did you do to these headphones? And then we had a talk with them. So anyway, that pair that Tony's sporting right now, he's going home with those. He's like, these are my new favorite headphones. He already had Hi-Fi Man, but he didn't have them modded with this fractal mesh stuff that Johnny's got going on. So my point was, when we were all talking about it, from a marketing perspective, I told John he wasn't charging enough. He's got to raise his prices. We're helping him with his website, his marketing stuff. But what he did to say thanks was, until he changes the prices, he gave us a Grand Theft World coupon code, which is GTW 101, because this is episode 101. LD, do you have that link someplace? I dropped it in a chat a couple days ago.
1 second here.
Yeah, he's going to have to bring it up because it was like not planned. But I figure anyone who's a member, anyone who listened this long and you like headphones, you might as well get them at a steep discount before he raises prices. And then, he's going to be doing press and tours and stuff like that.
So
I've been in to go ahead.
jmaudioeditions.com/shop, and GTW 101 gets you 20% off. I'll drop that link, that info in the chat.
And then, what's the model number on that box in the studio back there, Tony? The red set. So I'll just say it like this: I wear Sennheiser in-ear monitors here on the show, but when I have to edit videotape, audio, stuff like that, video, not tape anymore, but video footage, I have Bose headsets that are noise canceling, and I got Grados that Tony gave me 10 years ago, and I put this stuff on that John sent, those 2 sets that he sent this past week, and I was like, it's night and day difference. It's a game changer. I've never heard headphones like that before. And so I'm keeping the ones that I think sound the best, and Tony's keeping the ones he thinks sound the best. And
Open
we're getting
cavity,
LD
better.
lined up. Looks like Justin might need some too.
So it's a HER9. It's a standard closed back that has a lot of space. It's probably trying to mimic, an open back sort of style, which is what I prefer. I've been
open backs look better, but closed backs sound better. So I'm not wearing mine on camera.
I don't think they
I got mine better for sound, and you got yours. Those are more sporty.
Disagree. I think the sound's much better out of the open back. I've been an open back.
Sounds a subjective thing. There you go.
Well, the thing here's what I'll say is like they both are pretty equal. What you're looking for is a difference in soundscape. So it's the way in which you're hearing the positioning of the frequencies of the various sounds you get out of like an orchestra or a band, so forth and so on. And so I just prefer the breathability of an open back, whereas the R9s, that's what you have. The HER9s have that. They try to mimic that, but have a closed sort of. They try to mimic an open back with a closed back.
It sounds like you're in the room with them, right? That's what I like, because it's not blasting in your ear. It's in the ear cup, and your ear is listening into that little ear cup room. So, yeah, well played, Johnny. He's got like some patent pending, trademark.
I've been in the audiophile
fractal
equipment.
mesh. He's got it's all nerdy. It's above my pay grade, but my ears know how good it sounds. So.
Yeah, these are fantastic. Played. These are better than the ones I have currently. And I have a fantastic amp, couple amps actually for high fidelity equipment, audio equipment. I've been into the audiophile game for a while. I'm not like huge anymore like I used to be. I spent too much money in that market. But yeah, I'm a super nerd. I'm very familiar with it. And the next grade up from here would be electrostatics. So this is like, and that's spending tens of thousands of dollars potentially.
Yeah, Tony said he had listened at a buddy's house. His buddy's got
electrostatics with like
$50,000 set of headphones.
Well, it's not 50, but they're like,
all right, there you go.
But they're, I think the whole setup he has is probably around. He built his own amps, which is kind of dangerous because you're dealing with very high voltages for the type of amperage you need to push in electrostatics, which is a floating
super nerd stuff.
It's a floating magnetic bridge, which is obnoxious. A floating driver. We're using electrostatics, literally electrostatic fields. Anyways, the point is that's like the end game in audiophile headphone equipment, and people will spend routinely $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 on amps and other sort of components associated with it. I'm getting all this feedback.
Oh, Justin, we're getting echo because he opened up the talk probably.
That's okay. So I guess the wrap up the point is that these are like one small step down from that, in my opinion. Having gotten the opportunity to listen to my friend's electrostatics this summer for the first time after he built his own setup for it, absolutely incredible. There's nothing like an experience like that, but this is one small step below that. And so that's end game for the ultra audiophile nerds that have buku money like my buddy does. So to experience this at the price point he has it at is quite literally insane. I mean, I have hi-fi mans at home. People see it says wooden ones. These are just dramatically better. So whatever he did, I would like to pick his brain because I am astonished. And I have a bunch of speakers as well, and Emotivas and a couple different amps I use. And I'm into all that nerdy stuff. I used to be, but at least more. I still enjoy it. Not quite as into the game as I used to be back in the day because it can be a little bit of a money sink. But really great work, John. And I can't thank you enough for sending this to Richard and for Rich for giving me the opportunity to take one home with me.
They're really custom mods, so he can only do so many per month. So both boxes I got are like limited edition. And I was skeptical because I was like, I already have good headphones. But then I listened and I heard the difference and I was like, okay, well played. So we'll have John on to talk about our film adventures with Hector, but we can also talk about his current projects because he's an entrepreneur and it's not his first entrepreneurial endeavor. I have other products he's developed over the years and stuff like that. He's a good guy to know, and you should talk to him, Tony, because you guys are both like audiophile nerds. And I enjoy the music. You enjoy the technical stuff that makes the music sound great. That's
I would like to, and that was one of the key components in helping you get your sound to a respectable, actually, in my opinion, above a respectable stage way back in the day. Because I know I was pretty anal about your sound in regards to because your setup was
and speaking of that, let's bring Justin in because he had an open mic, but he's got speakers on, so we were all getting echo, and that's why I kept muting you, bro. So now you can talk.
Yeah, I was just gonna pipe in.
Reset that audio
restart.
engine.
Yeah, restart your audio engine. Let's start there. That's all right, because it's like 4:42 in the AM on the East Coast, and Justin is on East Coast time, and he's still awake, and he's got a situation. I'm covering for him right now. We'll hear him clearly in just a second. In just a second, if people are patient, we get it all cleared up. We're doing it live. We have a good attitude about doing it live. How now, Justin?
Extended attention spans.
There we go. Problem fixed. Woo! Big win.
All good.
Yeah, it's that. Yep, voice meter gets you. I haven't tried his headphones yet, but I was looking at his website, and I gotta say, as far as the fact that he's actually taking these apart and modding them, and the prices that he's offering is practically the
price you could pay for the naked ones without the mod. Yeah,
that's the thing that drove me nuts. Like that's
it's incomparable. Yeah. Like why even do it yourself? I mean, that he has the aptitude and technicability and makes the offer for it. It's awesome. Yeah, if you're into headphones.
Yeah, so he needs some other stuff for his website, some other marketing basics. But the first thing I was like, dude, it looks like you're losing money with your time with these mods. And what you're doing is far beyond, because Tony actually has Hi-Fi Man headphones already.
A bunch of different types of headphones, a whole different range of Grados. The ones I gave you those are like the first ones I ever bought probably 10 years ago. And so then I have Hi-Fi Mans. I have a couple others, probably some Sennheisers in there. And I can't really think of, I'd have to go back through my stash. I pretty much isolate one and then only use one I deem to be the best. I'm more into the amps that push the headphones. So I got really big into tube amps and solid states and that sort of thing for a while. So
I didn't know what to think, because I thought they sounded great, and probably like definitely the best headphones I'd put on my head to hear. I listened to Pink Floyd live at Pompeii, and so I didn't. But I'm a novice, so when I tested Tony, I was like, dude, here, check these out. And then he was like, oh, I already have these, and these are modded. Let me plug them in. And he's like, whoa, what the fuck? It sounds like you're there.
You should wear them real quick.
Nah. I told John, he said, would you wear them on camera? I said, no. I said, I'll wear them in the dark, listening to Floyd and a little Mushroom Trip, but I'm not going to.
They're a little gnarly. The R9s are.
They stick out a little bit, but that's the sound they make. There's got lots of different styles, but those are the ones
I'll put them on. I don't care.
Oh, look, Tony doesn't care. Go ahead, put them on.
Okay.
And see if it sounds any better.
Like 2 minutes. Yeah.
Oh, 2 minutes.
No, I mean, 30
You got to get them out of the box. Yeah. Now you'll at least get to see them. Tony will model them for you guys. Now, I prefer not having a big cup on my ear while I'm doing stuff here in the studio, because then you can't see the nice books behind me. You'd be distracted by what you're about to see land over there. Saucers.
They don't look, they're
not that bad.
I can't really.
Maybe it's just my big head. How do they sound?
You
didn't plug them in yet. You didn't plug them in.
I mean, I'll plug them in. I can plug them in real quick.
He was hearing me out of the other headphones. I knew he was cheating. And now we'll have LD sing Fidelio, some opera or something.
Fidelio.
He's just trying to get in.
There you go.
Masters of War.
Yeah, I did. I did that last night.
You can definitely tell the close back. It's open. It still has some breathability. Something I really look for in headphones, but it has that nice expansive soundscape. But it's definitely closed, like you're in an amphitheater. Well, no, not an amphitheater. Something that's more like a modern sort of acoustically designed auditorium. It reverberates well, but it's still enclosed. That's sort of the soundscape you get with these. Amazing. I just think the open back, there's nothing like an open back to me. It just breathes. But these are amazing. I mean, you can't go wrong with either. It's purely up to your subjective interpretation of sound at this point, and what you like when it comes to headphones, high fidelity headphones, you're looking for a certain soundscape. If you like a little bit more definition, if you will, to the different frequencies you're going to hear, these are probably a little better. If you like to sort of reverberate more, get more of that sort of expansive feeling to the sound, as though it's resonating and having no ending to it, as well as having very particular frequencies and being able to pick out extreme detail, then you want to go with.
Yeah, I noticed these. I was hearing instruments and songs I was familiar with, instruments I hadn't heard in those songs before. Mm-hmm. That was kind of the gist. And anything you got to wear for 6 or 7 hours on a show like this, it's got to be tried and true,
super
road
comfortable.
tested. So we're going to road test these a little bit more. And
these are some of the most comfortable headphones. But usually, the only mods I ever do is the headband and the earpieces, and these are actually probably the most comfortable I've ever put on. More comfortable than the electrostatics or my other hi-fi mans or the Grados I have or the Sennheisers or so forth and so on. So,
well, it's a good step in the right direction, but like I said, next week he's going to raise his prices so he can stay in business, so he can afford to pay for marketing, because that's part of his problem. He's got no leads. Now you got a couple leads, Johnny. Well played. People are going to get a great deal before you raise the prices, and they get a coupon code GTW101. What more can we do at 4:48 in the morning? All right, LD, who do we have to thank for this episode besides the fantastic members of the various levels of Grand Theft World's membership driving us forward?
Well, we have a great list. And then after that, speaking of suffering with meaning, I've got some video of concrete work that I want to show you guys.
Good. Yeah.
So we'll blast through this. Huge thanks to all our Grand Theft World community members, and big thanks to the Rockfin tippers tonight. Free Market Worker, $5. Thank you. Thomas Hutchinson, $10. Looking forward to what may be the GTW GOAT. Small Computer System Interface -1, $5 for Tony's new setup. Dave and Laura, $50. Please de-douche us. Obviously fans of the No Agenda show, and I told them they're far beyond that at this point.
Send them a title.
Yes, yeah, they're ready for titling. Yes. R. Lewis, $5. Happy Thanksgiving to all my Canadian brothers and sisters. Love all you GTWers, and I'm not just thankful for Richard, Tony, and LD, but every one of you. And thank you. I don't know what you Canadians have to be thankful for. Just kidding. Jake Sheen, $5. Whitney Webb's work is outstanding. You are all conquering miles for those that will follow. Dallas Avad, $10. What a brilliant conversation. Whitney is a great researcher and Richard a pro interviewer. I could listen to them talk all night. A lesson in advanced conspiracy facts for episode 101. $5 from Matt Green. Fantastic interview. Jacob Greismer, $2. Guessing the show already... I think you saw this, but I'll read it out loud. Guessing the show already knows this. John Potash talks about the Russell Fund. Is it that was created by the opium trade that started Ivy League schools? Question. Cultural Wars by Alex Stoner.
There's a little nuance in there. Elihu Yale worked for the East India Company, and he founded Yale University. So East India Company had a monopoly on opium. He became wealthy through that. He creates Yale. In 1832, the East India Company privatizes and gives up their monopoly and lets Jardine Matheson and companies that are named in Whitney's book, right? They get the opium kind of privateering going on in 1832, the same year that money from the Russell Trust goes into creating Skull and Bones. Now, there's William Russell, there's a whole bunch of different Russells. They're part of the Eastern Establishment, Boston Brahmin families. And just when you thought this show was over, it just got interesting talking about all this stuff just because we're, listening to the thank yous from the show. But that's a very interesting point, and we could actually build out on that maybe next episode.
There's a lot to that, yes.
Yeah, there's a lot.
The Boston Brahmins.
And Chris Milligan from China knows all about it. He wrote a book called Fleshing Out Skull and Bones, and it has a lot of those Eastern Establishment families in that book.
Didn't he also write on the Perfectibilis?
That was Terry Mellinson.
Oh, yeah.
But it's also published by Trine Day.
Yeah, I'm thinking Trine Day, yeah. For some reason, I thought Mellinson also. Never
mind. We got 100 from AREM. Thank you very much. TCAN, $5, said thanks, GTW. And just a couple comments. Free Market Worker said high quality conspiracy history product. And B1, I am a very visual learner, so I really appreciate the history blueprint, and it is truly invaluable. And if you haven't been to GrandTheftWorld.com, go over there, click the join community button right now, if you feel like it. You get access to a whole bunch of content and access to a Zoom webinar where we produce this show. It's probably one of the better experiences for viewing the show live. And
it's the one I prefer.
You also get to see behind the scenes before and after.
Yeah, people
So-
come, so we do the pre-show, we do the after show, people come in, they hang out. Right now there's 18 people here, but there was like 35 when we started. And it's like the closest you can get to being on the show without being on the show.
And you get access to the Tuesday night town hall, bi-weekly town hall. So
And sometimes we bring people into the show.
like
so-
last week.
Yeah.
So
You got to roll the dice, see what happens. We make it up as we go. That's the thing. Who else?
All
are
right.
they?
What's that?
I said, who else we got on the list there? Anyone?
That's the end of the list. But yeah, so Joshua and his neighbor got to visit my location last weekend, and they helped out a little bit with the dome project with Ernie Hancock. Hashtag Occupy the Land. So I wanted to play that, and then I've got another video of just us putting the final mortar mix coat on the dome. So
The gist is low cost, sustainable, low maintenance, high protection from the elements.
yeah, structural
type of
integrity is
indoor
incredible.
square
Yeah.
footage that you could use as an office, a root garden, homeschooling area, workshop, all these different things. And it's a low cost experiment. They're doing the pilot projects. It's taken longer than they thought because they were going to be able to spray the concrete on, but that has been done by hand by LD, mixing the concrete and applying the concrete, getting burned on the skin by the concrete, all that fun stuff. So now you get to see the end result of a lot of hard work that they thought that they were going to have machines to do, but it's even better. They did it by hand. They did it their way. They got it done. Let's check out.
There's a lot of technique to laying concrete.
I said it looks like Tatooine.
I'm curious. I'm really curious. Yeah, go play this one actually.
Yeah, as I said, suffering with meaning. Yeah, got some of that in. I think everybody should work a little concrete in their lives.
Hell yeah.
Yo!
All right, and yeah.
Now, did you edit that or did Joshua edit that?
That was
I
from
can't tell.
Joshua.
Okay,
Yeah.
it did look like his editing. I was suspecting that was a Joshua edit right there. Yeah, that's I really like the cuts between all that footage. So I got informed, but I was also entertained with the styling of it. So that's well played. It's hard to do
All
at
right.
almost 5 a.m.
And yeah, this
Keep
is
me
just
entertained.
mostly time lapse here I put together the other day. This is the final coat with mortar mix and tint.
Time lapse and speed ramps. There we go. Spreading freedom.
Been up since the crack of dawn, just trying to get paid. Been hotter than 100 suns, I can't find no shade. Just 2 more rows and I'm good to go. Yeah, I'm shutting this tractor down. Give me a half an hour for a shave and a shower, and I'll be outside your house. Might have a little dirt on my boots, but I'm taking you uptown tonight. Might have a little mud on my wheels, but they gonna shine with you up inside. Gonna hit the club, gonna cut a rug, burn it up like neon lights. Might have a little dirt on my boots, but dust right off them tonight. Got a little dirt on my boots. Hard as I worked all day, I'm gonna work harder loving on you. Spin you all over that dance floor, right out of them high heel shoes. And when you're ready to quit, baby, we can slip right out of that barroom door. And when I take you home, don't worry, babe, I'm gonna kick 'em off on the porch. Might have a little dirt on my boots, but I'm taking you uptown tonight. Might have a little mud on my wheels, but they gonna shine with you up inside. Gonna hit the club, gonna cut a rug, burn it up like neon lights. Might have a little dirt on my boots, but we're gonna dance the dust right off them tonight. Got a little dirt on my boots. A little dirty dancing, a blue collar romancing. I can get cleaned up if you ask me, but I can only get so fancy. Got a little dirt on my boots, but I'm taking you uptown tonight. Might have a little mud on my wheels, but they gonna shine with you up inside. Gonna hit the club, gonna cut a rug, burn it up like neon lights. Might have a little dirt on my boots, but we're gonna dance the dust right off them tonight. Got a little dirt on my boots. Got a little dirt on my boots.
Well, you got any final comments, Ernie?
Get a machine. Yeah, Lawrence is a machine, but not the kind of machine we need.
Not the machine you wanted, but maybe the machine you needed.
Right.
In the next part, they build the moisture evaporators and get the droids for their remake of Star Wars.
Oh man, that was satisfying to watch. Having done all that.
Well, good job, man. I mean, that's a hell of a lot of work. You've been doing that for how many weeks now? For months?
More than a few.
More than a few.
Yeah,
that's good.
It's good learning experience. Hey, we've got one more Rockfin super chat, and it looks like our first titling on the Grand Theft World podcast. Looks like that's happening. Zach, $2 requests Sir Zach, Lord of Algonquin. So there we go. Congratulations. We'll have to figure out how to.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the sign is. A night D. There you go.
All right.
LD can run the nights. I'll run the days.
We'll work on that in the background.
Yeah, we're making it up as we go. All right. So, do we have anyone to play us out tonight?
Well, I did
because I wanted.
Yeah.
I wanted to congratulate anybody who made it to the end of this episode because it is probably one of the longer, more dense episodes in this show's history, and that means much like riding a bull, that not everyone makes it to the end, but those who do are champions. So I wanted to thank you guys all for tuning in and not dropping out, and to see who we had to play us out.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, we've got a little JP Sears, and then a fine song by the Refusers that I picked up from James over at the Grand Theft World Liberty Radio. I think it'd be
right on. So here's JP, JC, Penny, Sears, whoever this guy is that keeps making videos. Let's see if he makes us laugh again, like he always does. Peace.
Thank you for kneeling during the Pledge of Allegiance. Now, for today's class, we're going to take inspiration from our great leaders and learn how to become a hypocrite. But I warn you, without enough indoctrination and examples of degenerates brilliantly portraying hypocrisy, you're at risk. At risk of what? At risk of letting your innate human nature lead you to a life of integrity. If that happens, you only have two options for jobs when you get older. You'll either be a domestic terrorist who loves this country, or you'll be a racist, but probably both. But because I love kids, I want a better future for you than that. But if you're not a hypocrite, why would those be the only two options? No more hateful questions. I wish you were aborted. So the first step to being a hypocrite is to stand for nothing. This requires you to have no moral code and no sense of purpose when it comes to contributing to the betterment of your community. Step number 2 to being a hypocrite: speak the language of moral superiority. That way, because you'll have no morals, it's easier for you to morph into a sounding box of saying whatever will make people think you're a more caring, better person than they are. The third and final step to being a hypocrite is never let your actions match your words. Now let's put all this into a practical example. Just imagine you're a hysterical person who says, "We should encourage and welcome all illegal immigrants to flood across our open border into this country." Now here's the question. When should you stand by this statement with your actions? A, at all times. B, never. Or C, at all times unless they're sent to my community, then we don't want those illegal non-whites here. Timmy? I don't know. At all times? Timmy, you worthless clump of cells, are you even paying attention? Not really. I think I'm still in a trauma response from yesterday when you were talking about your body and sexuality for half the day. We'll be talking more about that this afternoon. And thank you for listening so carefully yesterday. You wouldn't be traumatized unless you were paying attention. Johnny, is it C, at all times unless they're sent to my community, then we don't want those illegal non-whites here? That is the correct way to think. And your prize for being right, you get to keep these. Go ahead, take a sniff. Nobody has to know, it'll be our little secret. Go ahead. That feels so good. Now let's double down on being a hypocrite. We'll use a recent case study. On Martha's Vineyard, they have a sign that says, "We stand with migrants." Now those are great words to say, but then they recently had the tragic crisis of immigrants actually showing up on their island. Now as true law-abiding hypocrites, what do you think they did in response? Yes, Sarah?
Panicked and then sent them somewhere else so they don't have to be inconvenienced?
You, them, theirs are getting it. I think you're ready for an advanced lesson in hypocrisy. So, as you know, words have meaning. But as hypocrites, we have to face the adversity of redefining those words so they're a little bit more, shall we say, malleable. For instance, the word inclusive has a dictionary definition of including everyone, but the word has a hypocritical definition of rejecting anyone who thinks differently than you. Sarah, are you okay?
My chest is really hurting.
From what?
I think it's from the double mastectomy you encouraged me to get. I feel like I've been mutilated.
Enhanced. Enhanced is the correct thing to say. By the way, you're welcome. Okay, class. Let's really put your hypocrisy skills to the test. As you know, we're currently under a climate emergency that will have this very classroom underwater probably by the end of the week, unless we can relegate our country to third world status. Who has the authority to, shall we say, condescendingly talk down to people about climate change? People who are making an earnest effort to reduce their carbon emissions? That's absurd. You know what? That's the last straw with you. Go to the principal's office and get aborted. The correct answer is people who fly on private jets. That way they can arrive so they can shamingly lecture the little people about their use of fossil fuels. What was that? It was Sarah's head bouncing off the floor. Looks like she passed out. She'll be okay. Now, it sounds easy to be a hypocrite, but it's not. There's one thing that can absolutely ruin your pursuit of being a hypocrite, and it's having principles. Principles are what a person stands for. And it's been said that if you stand for nothing, you'll fall for anything. But if you stand for something, then you'll fall for nothing. Principled people hatefully stand by their principles no matter what, even when standing by them means that same principle is supporting something on the other side. And even worse, the actions of principled people always stay in alignment with the words they say. That can be a lot of effort, and is basically the opposite of being a hypocrite. Gross. So when it comes to principles, just say no. Any questions? Johnny. As a teacher, do you have any principles? Ew, no, of course not. Timmy? I think Sarah's dead. Good. No more carbon emissions from her. As I strive to be a hypocrite like you, I notice my heart feels heavy when I think about racism. You're white, so you are racist. So would it be good to use racist tactics to help end racism? Bingo. Now you're getting it.
Economic Forum, Great Resets, declared war on the food you like. They'll screw your life. You know nothing. And be happy. Eat the bugs. Eat the bugs. Eat the bugs. Eat the bugs. Insect protein is so green. Klaus Schwab says it's clean and lean. Do insects tempt your tongue? Or will they taste like dung? Maggots and mealworms are the food of the future. Eat the bugs! Eat the bugs! Eat the bugs! Eat the bugs! Insect farms will play a role in your dinner bowl. When cows eat grass, they make too much gas. Crickets and black flies are the food of the future. Eat the bugs. 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 Eat the bugs.
Conspiracy is a story of history. It's the story of plunderers taking care of people who produce. They claim to take care of them through government, which doesn't give you anything, it doesn't take away first. So it's not creating something out of nothing. It's very real what they're doing. They're taking your rights or taking some people's rights and adding more to someone else's rights.
If you haven't heard about our Grand Theft World community membership, here are a few of the things you've been missing. A mobile app where you can access replays of the Grand Theft World podcast and show notes. Access to the Grand Theft World community on Discord, where we crowdsource news and resources, and you can contribute to the show. The opportunity to participate in the Grand Theft World bi-weekly town hall. Exclusive content from Richard Grove, including behind-the-scenes footage and future access to unpublished material. 93 episodes of the Peace Revolution podcast, and the Grand Theft World newsletter delivered straight to your inbox each week. If you want to stay ahead of the great game, visit us at grandtheftworld.com, click or tap the button in the top right-hand corner, and join a vibrant community of researchers blazing a new path to truth. We'll see you there.